may not have landfall by Sunday afternoon. We may or may not. We'll get to that in just a second. And then it looks like the power outages primarily from that corridor from Orlando, Florida to Gainesville, towards Jacksonville, Florida, then up the coast towards Savannah, Georgia. So that's the scenario as it plays out now. But take a look at this. This has looked so impressive on the satellite imagery over the last few hours because this eye wall looks like it's really becoming much more concentric. When that happens, we know that it is strengthening. And you can see some of the orange and yellow bands around, I would say about 2/3 of
breaking news. Welcome to our continuing coverage of Hurricane Irma. I'm Michael Holmes in Orlando, Florida.
And I'm Isa Suarez in Miami.
All right, and we're going to bring you up to date now on all angles of the impact of this devastating storm. Gale force winds now striking South Florida as Hurricane Irma edges ever closer to the U.S. mainland. The storm, a dangerous Category 4 now, and is expected to continue gaining strength as it crosses warm water between Cuba and Florida. Its projected path has shifted slightly west, putting Florida's Gulf Coast on high alert. And as you can see in the video there, parts of Miami are now starting to flood. Have a look at that video there near the transport center. Almost 300,000 customers are now without power. That's a figure that will likely to become millions in the days ahead. Pleasure boats along the waterfronts taking a real beating, and the storm surge that follows could be catastrophic. All told, 6.5 million people in a state of 20 million have been told to get out, evacuate. More than 70,000 are now in emergency shelters throughout the state. All right, let's get the latest on the storm's strength and its position. Meteorologist Karen McGuinness has been following all of that. Joining us now from Atlanta. Plenty to talk about, Karen.
It is. We have just under 300,000 people reportedly without power. Looks like the Florida Keys, no power because they've been seeing tropical storm force and hurricane force winds for the past 4 or 5 hours at least. All right. One of the things as I was standing here waiting to go on the air that I noticed is it looks like a cluster of thunderstorms, just part of the outer bands, kind of making its way towards Cape Canaveral Kennedy Space Center. One of the things is I was standing here waiting to go on the air that I noticed coming out of that area as well. It looks like a very interesting storm as Irma was targeting that northern coast of Cuba as a Category 5, then 4, really must have been terribly battered. But now we're less than 70 miles south-southeast from Key West, Florida. We've had some wind gusts right around Miami at 68-mile-an-hour winds. Fisher Island, I believe, had close to 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts. So tropical storm force winds. So did you second-guess yourself as to whether you should have left the east coast of Florida where there were mandatory evacuations? You probably were once the track started changing. And it's still very frustrating to look at what's happening over the next 24 hours. So here it is. The eye is becoming very, it's warbling a little bit. It's one of those little perturbations. You've probably heard me. That's kind of my key word. When it doesn't follow that exact track, when it just makes a beeline for something, it just kind of wiggles a little bit because it's slowed down a lot too. So it's got a lot of thinking going on as it kind of navigates very warm waters here off the coast of Florida. It looks like the Florida Keys already seeing storm surge. They're not very high there, so could be inundated with lots of storm water as those waters rise, 8 to 10 feet possible. This is an RPM. This doesn't really show where the eye is going to be, but it just kind of shows you the wind field here. And where you see that purple, 60 miles an hour, where you see there's no color, that's in excess of 100-mile-per-hour winds. And then we look at Tuesday, and they're saying they've shut down some of the public schools already for the beginning of the week in many sections of Georgia because, frankly, there's still a lot of uncertainty as to what will happen with Category 4 Hurricane Irma. There is still this tornado watch out for the most dynamic part of the hurricane right now. This is very typical, and there's almost this east-west component where some of these stronger bands are coming on shore. But what we were looking at earlier, and I'm going to zoom in on this, there you can see already in Key West, we've seen winds in excess of hurricane force, 83 miles per hour reported at Key West. Still a little less than 70 miles away, and already hurricane force winds. Already starting to see the storm surge, and you've probably got another 6 or 8 hours before it even gets to Key West. So if you're already feeling the effects that strongly there, just think what happens when the eye, as a Category 4, maybe a Category 5 by the time it makes its way there, if you can only imagine how that impact is going to be. But from Melbourne to Fort Pierce, all the way down to Fort Lauderdale, tropical storm force winds, power outages reported here. Tampa, Sarasota. Sarasota, you're looking at more than likely, the computer models are saying, maybe landfall in Sarasota, but not until tomorrow night. Isa?
Karen, it's just incredible just to think that, you know, what we are feeling is nothing yet of what is to come. It hasn't even arrived here. This is just the beginning, isn't it? And already what we can see here, what I can hear is just howling winds. The rain has been so unpredictable in many ways. It's just been quite intense when it comes to the rain. But if you look around me where we are, this is a ghost town. I've seen police up and down this main road here, making sure that people are abiding by the curfew that has been set in place from 8 p.m. to 7 a.m. And the reason they're doing this, well, it's for your safety, really. You shouldn't be out. It's very dangerous. Yes, it's shifted somewhat, as Karen was saying. Nevertheless, it is very dangerous because of the debris and because of the storm surge. Hence why police are taking those measures and telling people to stick and bide by their calls. Let's go now to Ed Lavandera. He is in Naples, Florida. That's one of the areas that Karen McGuinness was pointing out there that's going to see a huge storm surge up to as much as 15 feet. And I suspect, Ed, that is one of the biggest concerns for authorities there.
Yeah, no question. Obviously, the intensity of the winds is also a big concern, and what kind of structural damage that might cause here. But for the most part, people that we have spoken to say that a lot of the buildings here in this corner of Southwest Florida have been built rather well in recent years, and they feel confident that it can withstand the winds. The mayor of Naples, Florida, which is where we're at, south of Fort Myers, describes this city of about almost 20,000 people as a ghost town. Many people started evacuating days ago, even before it was clear that Hurricane Irma was going to make more of a direct impact on the western Gulf Coast of Florida. And so many people packed up and headed out of town. You really saw the effects of that here throughout the day after we arrived this morning. There were empty streets, businesses closed down. Clearly, everyone had, or most everyone appears to have left this area. The mayor says that they are ready for the storm. We spoke with a police chief down in a little island called Marco Island, south of where we are, which will be one of the first areas that really starts feeling the intense impacts of this hurricane after the hurricane passes through Key West. That Marco Island, the police chief there says he's worried about the storm that's coming, but that they're prepared. They've done everything they can to get their force ready to deal with whatever might come. So a great deal of anxiety here looming here in these overnight hours as this region prepares for the arrival of this storm. Isa?
And as we heard from the governor of Florida, he was basically saying there's more than 300 or so 365 shelters along that route. How have those, I know you said that some of those shelters were already in place, but did you see an increase in shelters as we saw the hurricane shift somewhat?
Well, we were told that some 27 shelters or almost 30 shelters opened up here in Collier County, which is the area that we're in. The last update we had earlier this evening was that there were 3 of them that still had availability in them, and that it had the potential of filling up quickly. I still think we have some time in the early morning as we come here to sunrise, sometime between now and noon here on the East Coast of the United States, that you might have some last-minute people making adjustments to what they see and the news of the storm that they wake up to. So I think you might have a little bit of a window of opportunity to make some adjustments, not evacuating the area. There's the police chief, as a police chief we talked to, said it is too late to evacuate this area. You have to figure out how to protect yourself while you're here in this area now. But I think in the morning hours you might have some last minute opportunities to adjust any kind of security plans that you might have.
Ed Lavandera, thanks very much. We'll touch base with you in an hour or so, and do keep safe. I want to bring a guest from Key West, actually, on the phone. He's a resident in Key West. His name is Jason Jonas, and he joins me on the line. And Jason, we've been talking, a very good morning to you, first of all. We've been talking about how many people, really, the amount of people, I should say, who have lost power in that area. Do you have power? What's the situation like?
Well, good morning. Unfortunately, we do not have power right now. We lost that about 11 o'clock. Conditions on the ground right now, it is, as you can imagine, pretty windy, pretty rainy. We have about, I don't know, standing water up to the sidewalk right about now. And looks like it's going to be deteriorating over the next couple hours.
And I'm guessing from what you're saying, you're at home, you're staying put.
Well, actually, I'm at a brand new townhome in Old Town in the heart of downtown. It's pretty much built like a bunker, concrete, steel, rated 225 mile per hour winds. This is pretty much one of the safest spots on the island, and that's pretty much the only reason why I ever considered staying here, because I knew that I had a pretty good chance of making through this thing.
But as you've been hearing, no doubt, the Hurricane Irma is now intensified and strengthened to Category 4. And as you know as well, it shifted northwest in the last 10, 15 hours or so. Do you still believe, Jason, that you've made the right call here?
Well, there really is no right call. I mean, I would have to go to South Carolina to escape this thing, and that just really wasn't a viable option for some people down here. So, we made the best with what we have. We're 30-plus feet above sea level in a place that's built to withstand 225-mile-an-hour winds. I mean, that's, a better chance than being exposed out on the highway in traffic trying to make it to Georgia.
Yeah, absolutely. You plan for the worst and you hope for the best, don't you? Jason, I appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. Do keep us posted and let us know when you get electricity up and running and power up and running. We wish you all the best. Just one example there of someone in Key West who we're just starting to see the effects, really, of Hurricane Irma, who has now gone from a Category 3 to a Category 4. And, of course, it still hasn't packed the punch, but we're already beginning to feel its impact. You are watching CNN. Please stay with us and please stay safe.
Bizarre found video and damage photos on social media.
Yeah, that's right. Irma is making it known that it is now in Florida. Take a look at this video. This was recorded in the Florida Keys just around midnight. Look at how heavy those winds are. Incredible. You can see the lightning, the heavy rain, and look at the palm trees as the fronds just lash in the wind. Incredible video there. It's very a scary sight down there right now. CBS Miami actually posted this video yesterday. The lightning, as the heavy rain, the Keys, and look at the palm trees, the heavy surf, just waves crashing on shore. Video there. And of course, it's very scary sight down there right now. Rain, and there's no beach or anything. The storm surge is just very dangerous there. And this is also in Miami on South Beach. Look at that. That's a stop sign blowing in the wind. Oftentimes we see these types of images when hurricanes blow through, and that just shows you how powerful this storm is. And it hasn't even made landfall yet, so you're seeing all the torrential rain and the wind. Trees are barely holding up, And of course, that stop sign was growing crazy in the wind there. And the camera almost seems to not be able to record the winds because they're so high. And obviously, you don't want to step outside during something like this. And celebrities are even posting videos on Twitter. Take a look. This is from Enrique Iglesias. He posted this just before Irma lashed the city of Miami, telling everyone to stay safe. Now, let me show you some damage that these winds are leaving behind. Trees are actually getting knocked down. Look at that. That's a massive tree that has been uprooted. No surprise, really. You saw how strong those winds were. And since the road is soggy, or the ground is so soggy, we're going to be seeing a lot of this. Trees are also split in half. Winds are so strong, it knocked down this very large tree in someone's backyard. We don't think it hit someone's home, so that's the good news. And look at this. Debris scattered all across the sidewalk. You can see trees split in half. So this is why it's going to be dangerous to go outside during the storm. Electrical lines are down also. This is, I believe, in Sunny Isles, just outside of Miami. And this is only some of the damage, folks. We're going to be seeing a lot more widespread damage here in Southwest Florida as this storm moves through.
Corey, that is some amazing video. Every single piece of that video is just incredible. And it's really scary when you think about that. All that stuff is going to be coming here very shortly.
Oh, yeah. This is just the beginning, I'm sure, of seeing that damage video and pictures on social media, unfortunately.
Right.
But make sure to share it, and we'll definitely take a look at it. But we want to get to meteorologist Matt Devitt now.
Karen McGuinness. Karen, tell us about where Irma is now, where it's headed. I know that its latest track is extremely worrying to Tampa, Naples, and places like that along that west coast.
It is, for a variety of reasons. We have talked about that upper right quadrant that is so crucial. That is an area that is going to pull that water in off of the open waters. It's also an area that's very dynamic, meaning they could see the potential for tornadoes. And in fact, we've had numerous reports of funnel clouds, tornadoes that have been reported. And as I mentioned, it's very dynamic. But as we start to see some of these bands move on in across South Florida, they have been gusty now. They produced some brief heavy rainfall. About 200,000 people without power with the system now. Here's Ishan. It has just pulled away from the coast of Cuba. But let's go ahead and show you some other information, and it becomes quite compelling. This has been one fickle hurricane. Without a doubt. If you remember, about a week or so ago, we were talking about maybe landfall right around Miami. And then those computer models were kind of dividing it between the East Coast and the West Coast. Here are some of the current wind gusts. 36-mile-per-hour wind being reported in Miami. You go further to the north on the west side, Punta Gorda reporting 23-mile-per-hour sustained winds with gusts around 32. So what can we expect? There was a shift from our last update from the National Hurricane Center. If you remember, we were looking at something that perhaps would affect the Everglades and just kind of ride.
It's 3:16 in the morning here in Miami, and you are watching CNN's continuing coverage of Hurricane Irma. I'm Isa Suarez. This is a ghost town here in Miami, and hurricane hasn't even arrived yet. What we're feeling is really the outer bands of Hurricane Irma. The wind, if you can hear it, it's howling. The rain is starting to pick up with quite a bit of intensity, and it's just so unpredictable. As you can see right now, it's intensifying. And this is just the beginning. As we've been hearing from our meteorologists, it hasn't arrived. It's still a bit far away from where we are, but this is the beginning of things to come. And it is shifted. It has intensified to a Category 4, and it has shifted to northwest, away here from Miami. But nevertheless, this is what it is doing right now. Let's get more from my colleague Derek Van Dam, who is in Miami Beach. And Derek, I know the curfew is in place, has been in place from 8 p.m. to 7 in the morning. From what you have seen, have people been abiding by that?
Oh, without a doubt, Isa. You said it was a ghost town where you are. It is literally a ghost town here as well. People really heeded the evacuations. In fact, the mandatory curfew, according to the police, if you are found outside on these streets, you are susceptible to being arrested. Who would want to be out here right now, with the exception of a weatherman, right? Listen, we got a lot of threats to talk about here in Miami Beach, specifically the tornado threat that is an ongoing concern for much of southern Florida as Irma approaches closer and closer. The thing about tornadoes, as these outer bands come moving in, they can spin up a tornado very quickly. They're often not the most powerful tornadoes, but they can cause destruction as well. So tornado watch is still underway. Flash flood watch is still underway. Storm surge warnings still underway for this area as well in Miami-Dade. We've had transformers blowing in the distance. We've had the skyline just lit up with blue as some of the heavier rain bands came through. And the wind knocks over some of the trees and some of the palm trees. So transformers have been going down. Electricity has been flickering. According to the latest officials, 156,000 people in Miami-Dade alone without electricity right now. There are 4 fire stations located within Miami Beach. They have evacuated 3 of them. That means there's only 1 that's left that could supply any kind of rescue operations across this area. And the fire officials here say that they will stop any kind of rescue attempts or service calls that they receive the second the winds sustain more than 40 miles per hour. And I would imagine that would happen any time because the storm continues to move closer and closer. Isa?
Yeah, and Derek, you know, we've been talking so much in the last 24 hours or so, but in particular in the last 6 hours, on the question of complacency, given the fact that we have seen Irma shift somewhat northwest. Storm surge, regardless of where you are, is still a huge problem, isn't it?
Oh, without a doubt. Think about the momentum behind Irma and how long it's been traveling over the open ocean. It's built up an incredible amount of water. So anything from the Atlantic will push into Miami-Dade. We're still expecting 3 to 5 feet of inundation along the extreme coastal areas. But as you go to the West Coast, that's where the real storm surge sets in. And remember, storm surge happens once the eye wall passes to the north. Remember, that needs to take place because at the moment, from Naples to Sarasota and to Tampa Bay, the winds are offshore, bringing the ocean and the water source away from the coastline. But once that eye travels through that region late in the day tomorrow or late in the day on Sunday, you know the winds are going to change, and that's going to bring the waters right back along the coast. So.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Derek Van Dam there for us. Do keep us posted, Derek, on what you're seeing there and the conditions on the ground in Miami Beach. Thanks very much, Derek. And Michael, it doesn't matter which way you slice this, isn't it? This is a huge hurricane. It hasn't yet made landfall, but its impact is already being felt, and we should all respect it and be prepared, really, for the very worst. And then after that, really just hope for the best.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, thanks very much. I want to bring in storm chaser James Reynolds, who's been following this. He's on the phone from the city of Naples. James, always good to get your thoughts. Naples is one of a couple of places that has had a history with hurricanes and is worried also about storm surge. What are you seeing there? What do you predict?
Yeah, it's a very concerning situation here in Naples, Michael, especially regarding the storm surge, which you just mentioned. The forecasts from the National Hurricane Center are talking of 10 to 15 feet of surge in the coastal areas of this very low-lying area. And as a storm chaser here on the ground waiting for the arrival of the hurricane, it's a huge concern for me. There's a lot of property and development along the waterfront in this area. So it's something I'm going to be watching very closely and making sure that I'm well away from and kept safe from.
Yeah, I mean, you follow storms. I mean, this is what you do. What do you make of this one, the ferocity, the size, and the track at the moment?
Well, we have a saying that I'm particularly wary of these old storms which have been churning across the ocean for, almost over a week now. The history of this storm is devastating. It has killed a lot of people, and it is still going strong. And yeah, I'm very anxious about it and nervous, and it's going to be a very high-impact, devastating event for Florida. And it hasn't happened in quite a long time. The last major hurricane to hit Florida was in 2005. So there's a lot of people here who will not have experienced anything like this before, and it could take a lot of people by surprise, Michael.
Give us a sense, James, of the atmosphere there and the time you've been there. I mean, what are people saying? What does it feel like on the streets?
Well, I have to say people have been very calm and things have been very orderly. It was a nice surprise. We actually managed to fill up the petrol tank on the car pretty easily. and we did still see, food and water on the shelves of a lot of the shops here. So that was great to see people just calmly and orderly going about their preparations, boarding up businesses and houses. So it's certainly been very calm. I haven't seen any panicking or anything like that, which has been great to see people taking it seriously.
Now, you are a storm chaser. Where do you plan to ride this one out?
Well, we've scoped out a shopping mall complex with a solid concrete multi-level car park. So that should keep us safe from the storm surge, the elevation, and the concrete will keep us safe from the wind. So that's my plan right now.
All right, James Reynolds, storm chaser there in Naples, Florida, which is in the path of Hurricane Irma. Appreciate it, James. We'll check in with you a little bit later as well. Meanwhile, another city that is in the aim of Hurricane Irma is Tampa on Florida's west coast. It is facing a major storm surge threat from this hurricane. Now, I spoke earlier with the city's mayor, Bob Buckhorn, about what it is doing to prepare.
We've been lucky because we haven't taken a direct hit in over 90 years. So we really have been blessed. But we also recognize that our day was going to come, and it looks like our day has come. Fortunately, we've got a whole city that has trained for this. Now we're in the execution phase, and we got a lot of people that are counting on us to get up and do our jobs tomorrow.
Yeah, there's been a lot of sort of talk, speculation, but also reporting that Tampa in particular is vulnerable to this sort of storm, to a hurricane, and to the storm surge. So many houses close to water, of course, and the proximity to the lower levels. What about the storm surge? That must be your big concern, I imagine.
It is indeed. It is the issue that we worry about the most. It is what we fear the most. I mean, we're going to get through the winds. We'll get through the rain, depending on what this level of surge is. But more importantly, the surge will occur tomorrow at the same time we have a high tide. So that compounds the problem. So for our low-lying areas, which happen to be very close to downtown, those areas that tend to hold a lot of water in rainstorms anyway because they are low-lying, my house, for example, we've evacuated. I am in flood zone level A. Those are the areas that I fear for the most and potentially would experience that surge moving in early on Monday morning.
Well, tell us a little bit about that. I mean, everybody hopes that, Irma is a little bit kinder to Tampa than other places because of that vulnerability. Tell us, what is the worst case scenario? What if the storm does the worst thing and you do get that surge? How big will it be? How much of the city could be impacted?
Well, certainly all of downtown would be impacted. All of the areas along the waterfront, which tend to be our more affluent areas, would be impacted. It would be pretty devastating. There would be a lot of trees down. There would be a lot of standing water. There would be power disruptions. It would take a number of days to get the power hooked up, if not weeks. So I think you would see Tampa in a predicament, not that we wouldn't emerge from it, but it would be a tough couple weeks, I think.
And that was Tampa Mayor Bob Buckhorn speaking to me earlier about the potential impact of Hurricane Irma on his city, and in particular the storm surge. The city, as we were saying, vulnerable to that sort of impact from a hurricane, the surge. Do stay with us. The latest on Hurricane Irma, now battering South Florida, coming up after a short break.
Right along the coast, but now there are indications that this is going to pull away from the coast just a little bit more. You can see kind of this in the cone. So maybe 15 miles offshore for a while. That is until it starts to jut out here right around the Fort Myers, maybe the Sarasota area. But this is going to be inundating these coastal regions with perhaps 10 to 15 feet of water, which is hard to wrap your mind around, but they are in the worst possible position. If it looks like Irma is just kind of hugging the coast, they are going to be on the side that is, as I've mentioned, the most dynamic. As it makes its way towards the Bend area in Florida, perhaps being downgraded maybe to a Category 1. But until then, we're a very strong Category 3. The water temperatures across this region are approaching 90 degrees. That's the kind of energy that hurricanes like this feed off of. You may remember as it was interacting with the Turks and Caicos and the Bahamas that we saw it just kind of gradually lose a little bit of its energy. But no, not now. Now we're pulling out towards the Gulf and in this purple shaded area from just south of Fort Myers all the way to the Everglades. That's where we're seeing for the potential for storm surge of 10 to 15 feet. Want to mention a couple of specific things for you. First of all, they tweeted out, Broward County Sheriff's Department saying that now that the wind is gusting over 45 miles an hour, they are pulling their deputies off the road. They are beginning to do that already because it affects how they are going to be able to do their job. Also, from the FEMA administrator, he spoke with CNN's Renee Marsh. He said that there could be 3 million people that are without power as a storm affects this region. Asked a little bit more, could it possibly be more than that? And he said, yes, it would be hard to speculate. There could be as many as 5 million people without power. Now, imagine that. When we were talking about why you probably need to leave because there's a Category 5 hurricane, maybe Category 4 that's going to be making landfall. Now we've got a Category 3. There's not a lot of gas to talk about. Maybe there would be damage to the place where you're seeking some security, your home. Perhaps you're near the coast, so you have the storm surge to worry about. Maybe you could see the potential for 10, 12 inches of rainfall, maybe some isolated heavier amounts. Maybe you're in the quadrant where there is tornadic activity, and certainly there is a tornado watch out from Fort Lauderdale towards Miami and into the Florida Keys over through the Everglades. So the impacts are tremendous, and you don't have to have a Category 5 hurricane for this to really deeply impact your life. And as the FEMA administrator said, there could be 5 or 6 million people without power. Could be a couple of days. It could be a couple of weeks, but either way, the infrastructure that has to be repaired from all of this is going to be so substantial. Take a look at this. We got a wave or a band of some of the outer bands moving right across Fort Myers, Florida. I want to point this out. Wow, this is in that dynamic area I was telling you about. Some of these cells right here have the potential to produce some tornadoes. So we're looking at perhaps hurricane force winds all along that western edge of Florida, from Marco Island to Naples to Cape Coral, Florida, and in towards Bradenton, Sarasota, Tampa. You have to remember this Bay Area, that water can really pile up quite a bit. So we'll be here. We've got live updates from the Weather Center every half hour. Back to you, Isa. One thing you can say about Irma, you can say about every hurricane, is they are fickle. If you remember about a week ago, we were looking at Miami. Miami seemed to be the focus of where the computer models, the European, the North American model was kind of aiming at. Then as we went along, it kept shifting just a bit. There are a lot of dynamics that take place with hurricanes, as you well know. And now an interesting dynamic has occurred. But I'll give you the latest information right here. The eye has really gone through an eye wall replacement cycle. It is looking tighter and more concentric now that it has pulled away from the coast of Cuba. And by the way, you can only imagine what happened when this was a Category 4, made landfall as a 5, became a Category 4. What kind of damage must be seen there? But now it looks like the Florida Keys are going to be battered for hours. It's still about 90 miles away. So here we have this great vulnerability, and it is looking very impressive on the satellite imagery. So I dare say that by the next advisory, we may see this creep back up again to a stronger hurricane. All right, there's a lot to be said. Numerous power outages reported across the Florida Keys, specifically Key West. But take a look at this. This doesn't look all that impressive. It's a storm surge. But let's zoom in across this region. Here are the Florida Keys, essentially the Everglades, and then we go up towards Marco Island and Naples, Florida. We can zoom in and show you Marco Island. Marco Island is beautiful. It is gorgeous. It's a sumptuous community. But there are all these little inlets in here. And if we're looking at a storm surge of, let's say, conservatively, 8 to 12 feet, could be 15 feet. We're looking at all of this beauty going underwater, and look at all these little inlets. All of that will be flooded. There is a very fragile ecosystem across this region as well. Let's go further to the north towards Naples and Cape Coral, and you can see all the different little inlets across this region as well. And still, we go to our graphic here and give us an indication that Sanibel Island, Captiva, many visitors there essentially can expect to be underwater with 8 to 12 feet, possibly 15-foot storm surge. They're going to be repeatedly battered. They're going to be in the worst possible zone of this hurricane over the next 24 hours. Where do we expect landfall? Let's go up a little bit further. We zoom in across Cape Coral. Here we go. We're looking at the region right around Punta Gorda. And where you see this red shaded area, that's where we're looking at significant storm surge. You go back in a little bit, and maybe the storm surge is only a foot, maybe 3 feet. But if that storm surge is in your home, that's major devastation. Let's zoom out a little bit more, go up the coast just a little bit further. Here's Tampa, here's St. Pete, here's that waterway. And if you add an additional 10 to 12 to possibly 15 feet of water across this region. Now, this juts out a little bit. And because now the computer models are suggesting that it's already moved towards the northwest just slightly. So we're looking at being battered by that upper right quadrant. That's where we see the potential for very high winds. You're looking at the potential for tornadoes. Already I saw at Fisher Island, a 57-mile-an-hour wind gust. At Key Biscayne, there's already a 65-mile-an-hour wind gust. So even though if you shifted from the east coast of Florida to the west coast of Florida and thought, oh, you're safe there, we now know the west coast is very vulnerable. But still, this east coast is being battered as well. It may be tropical storm force winds, but still this hurricane is 90 miles away from the Florida Keys. So there's still this great impact. When do we anticipate landfall? That was what I was trying to get to. It looks like it may just hug right around the coast. It could possibly not make landfall until about midnight tomorrow night, possibly around Naples, could be Sarasota, probably Sarasota, or perhaps further north. We'll just have to keep looking at it. Michael, back to you.
Yeah, Karen McGuinness, thanks so much. And last hour we spoke to the mayors of both Naples and Tampa, both very worried about this latest track and what it could mean for storm.
So many things to tell you. First of all, its position now puts it about 80 miles to the southeast of Key West. It has slowed down. We watched it march across the Atlantic, and it was moving towards the west at just about 18 miles an hour. That was probably at its peak. Then we noticed as it approached the Leeward Islands and then into the Turks and Caicos, that started slowing down a little bit more. Yesterday, we were looking at it at just about 12 miles an hour. Now look at what it is. Our latest update from the Hurricane Center has it moving to the northwest at 6 miles an hour. The slower it moves, the better chance we're going to see this increase in intensity, because the water temperature here is from about 85 to close to 90 degrees. Perfect combination. There's nothing that's going to shear it. You've got that warm water. It is bumping up against the southern end of the Florida Peninsula and the coast of Cuba. We can only imagine what happened along the coast of Cuba, but it is a strong Category 3. Our next update from the National Hurricane Center comes at about 2 o'clock. So we'll have some idea. My guess is it's right on the edge of becoming, once again, a Category 4. In the satellite imagery, wanted to point this out to you, but I missed it. There is a slight jog to the north with that eye. It is something that we watched, even though the overall trend is to the northwest. I use the word perturbation. That just means like a little jog. Nothing is ever going to be in a straight line, perfectly straight. They take little maneuvers, especially as it's interacting with different land masses or different currents. All right. This is very impactful as well. In the red shaded area, the entire peninsula of Florida, even over towards Tallahassee, there are hurricane warnings. That comes as no surprise, because the impact, even over along the East Coast, if a lot of people said, oh, we're not staying here in Miami or this area, we're going to move to the West Coast, and now the big threat is for the West Coast. But I will tell you that right now, Miami is seeing a wind gust of 53 miles an hour. There's a wind gust on Fisher Island, that's just to the north of Miami, that has a wind gust of 57 miles an hour. Fort Lauderdale, 40 mile an hour. At Kendall, almost a 60-mile-an-hour wind gust. So we've got tropical storm force winds. But look at this. Tropical storm warnings out. Encompasses Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, towards Charleston. I know this area like the back of my hand. And then for Atlanta, there are tropical storm watches out. They've already canceled the public schools. All right. I want to show. Maybe we can see this if you zoom in a little bit, Dennis. There has been an eye wall replacement cycle. What does that mean? Well, it's as if it's trying to reorganize. It's going to be gaining some strength. It's not really interacting with the coastal areas. Where you see this red shaded box, this is our tornado watch, because this is where we see the really strong dynamics for tornado activity. And indeed, over the last 12 hours or so, we see some really strong bands that move across. They have lots of lightning with them. There's lots of twist in the atmosphere. It's very moist and it's very unstable. So we could see one of these just kind of fire up very easily. All right. If you see, once again, Dennis, maybe you could zoom in on this. It may not depict it so well, but there is that slight jog to the north. What does that tell us? Well, it's just really hard to say because we know just how fickle Irma has been. I want to show you one other thing before my time is up here. This is a storm surge where you see the red. Let's zoom in, and all the way from the Florida Keys, and the highest point is about 12 feet above sea level. They could see a storm surge of 5 to 10 feet. They will be underwater. Marco Island, beautiful, lovely coastal area. All these inlets could be inundated with 10 to 15 feet of water. That is an estimate at this point, but it's a very good estimate. And then as we go up the coast towards Port Charlotte, this beautiful area as well, a lot of these inlets, Sanibel, Captiva, those are areas that could see 10, possibly 15 feet of storm surge. So very vulnerable coastline, possible landfall going into midnight tomorrow. A very different scenario, but in an hour, another update.
That's important.
It is important because the impacts can be different. And it doesn't take much of a shift for you to, say, see a storm surge of maybe 5 feet as opposed to 10 feet. But I wanted to show you this. This is kind of an interesting as far as the model runs go. At the National Hurricane Center at 5 p.m., you plotted out all the coordinates, and this is what it was doing. And it was going to make its way up towards Sarasota. But then the next run from the National Hurricane Center plotted out the coordinates that we anticipate that it will take. And there we shift it just a little bit to the west. But it doesn't really make landfall. Let's move this a little bit further to the north. It doesn't really make landfall until you get up towards the Tampa-St. Pete area. Is that possible? Certainly looks like it. This has been one of the most fickle hurricanes. We can have all of the really good computer models in the world, and they will tell us something different because the environment has changed, just how it interacts with land has changed, how the sea surface temperatures may change. There are all kinds of different variables that to forecast out beyond just a couple of days is very difficult. All right, want to show you another couple of things. This is looking at the forecast radar. We go right now and we put it into motion, and it brings it up across the Florida Keys. And by the way, just about everyone in the Florida Keys has lost power. I saw a report from a woman who is in Great Pine Key. That's just to the north of Key West. And she said, I have about 8 inches of water in my home. Well, do you think that's just because of the rainfall? No, they hadn't gotten that much rainfall. There was water that was creeping up. That is the storm surge. When you see it kind of in real time like that, it's almost mind-boggling to think this isn't because of rain. It isn't because of rain. It's because the wall of water gets kind of pushed up because it is just such a tremendous system. There we go, right around Tampa, and you can see all these deeper red shaded areas. Well, those are some of the stronger bands that move along that upper right quadrant. That's where it's typical in a storm like this to expect and to see hurricanes. I want to point out one other thing. We were looking at this in the CNN Weather Department. There was just a very noticeable jog kind of to the north, just a little bit. That could be just like a little blip. Could be that it's just one of those little perturbations where it doesn't exactly make a straight line, but overall its movement is to the northwest and it's moving slowly. It's only moving at about 6 miles an hour. So it's slowed down. It's not barreling along like it had been, but it's slowed down. So you can imagine we were looking at landfall right about now. We were calling it yesterday. Now it's been moved another 24 hours. So if you were thinking, oh, I was on the East Coast, moved to the West Coast, and probably would have been better to stay over here, it's not better over here. It isn't better over here. There's still a storm surge. There are still winds at tropical storm force. In the Keys, we had our first report of a hurricane force wind gust there. And the storm, the Hurricane Irma, is still 80 miles away. Now, in just about 30 minutes, we'll get another update from the National Hurricane Center. 26 million people under a hurricane warning. This is a storm surge. This is a problem. This is the illustration I was giving you about the woman who is on Big Pine Key. Purple shaded area, pink shaded area, 10 to 15 feet from the Everglades, Marco Island, to Naples, to Fort Myers, 6 to 10 feet, Tampa 5 to 8. All of that's going to change. If Harvey just stays a little bit further to the west in the warm waters, Irma, if it stays just a little bit further to the west, we're going to see that storm surge become even bigger. And there's a tropical storm watch now that includes Atlanta, Georgia. And some of the schools are saying, we're not going to open on Monday. It's a wait and see situation. Back to you guys.
Karen, very quickly, I know you're outlining the path it will take, but for our viewers in Florida Keys, those in Naples, they're sitting there watching, wanting to know when they should expecting it. You said 24 hours. Any idea in terms of time?
Because it has slowed down in its forward progression, it's moving northwest at 6 miles an hour. It's not moving northwest at 16 miles an hour. But yesterday I said, oh, it'll be about midnight on Saturday going into Sunday. Now we're saying Sunday late night. But there are comparisons that are being made to Hurricane Donna back in 1960. Why do we mention that? Because Irma has taken a similar path right across the Lesser Antilles, Turks and Caicos, the Leeward Islands, bounced along the north coast of Cuba, then made a turn towards the north, moved across the Keys, and then went in right around Fort Myers. Is that possible? Certainly is possible, but right now, it's very hard to say. All of those huge, beautiful cities along the west coast of Florida are very vulnerable, and any one spot could be the landfall location. Right now, it appears as if it could be the Sarasota area. Very warm water temperatures here, but it's that storm surge. The storm surge, he says, that's going to be huge. These are low-lying areas, and it's going to inundate homes and buildings and businesses. It's a terrible situation.
Karen McGinnis, thank you very much for that.
Getting the latest information. National Hurricane Center just updated the data. And it's not good news because now it's back up to Category 4. We were looking at this and it had a tightly wound eye as it just kind of bounced off that coast of Cuba and is now already hurricane force winds are being felt all across the Florida Keys from top to bottom. We've seen some wind gusts at 75 miles an hour. Some reports are that all of the Keys do not have power. We have reports of 200,000 plus people across the Florida Peninsula are without power. And you can imagine that that number is going to go up. It's still moving slowly. That's not a good thing either, because the slower it moves over the warm waters, we're still looking at it perhaps gaining even more intensity. So right now, associated with Irma, 130 mile an hour winds, Category 4 hurricane. All right, I was giving you the illustration of how this compares with Hurricane Donna. where on this date it made landfall in Florida as a Category 4 hurricane. And here is the path that Irma took, bouncing around along that coast of Cuba. We can only imagine what kind of damage that must have been, because it was for the better part of a day as a Category 3. But then here is Hurricane Donna. Moved across the Turks and Caicos, came close to Cuba, moved across the Florida Keys. Does this sound familiar? Well, that's just what Irma is doing. However, here is the cone. Let's take a look at this. This is its potential. That's a pretty wide mark to kind of hit. But if we were to split the difference here, go right up through the center, are we making landfall at Bradenton, Tampa, St. Pete, Sarasota? Right now, it looks like Sarasota, but this system has had so many iterations, has had so many incarnations that it would be very hard to predict right now. Every city all along this west coast of Florida is vulnerable. Here's our spaghetti models. We show you this all the time. They're in agreement that it's moving north. They're in agreement it's moving slightly northwest. But any wiggle room, even if it's 5 miles, 10 miles off the west coast of Florida, that's a huge impact. But what I will tell you, when I saw this, it floored me. We're still seeing this outer band. There's been an eye wall recycling here. Essentially, it's gotten stronger. But it made that little wobble more towards the northwest. So if you know anyone in the Florida Keys, chances are you're not going to be communicating with them because the storm surge here is supposed to be 5 to 10 feet. You go up towards the coast, towards Fort Myers, the beautiful Marco Island, and you're looking at 10-foot storm surge, maybe 12-foot storm surge. You could see about 10 inches of rainfall. Could see 20 inches of rainfall. That's kind of an outlier. But in this zone, that upper right quadrant, this is where we're looking at the potential for tornadic activity because it is so dynamic. This is the strongest portion of the hurricane typically. And you see these really strong outer bands where there's lots of lightning. There's twist in the atmosphere. There's lots of low-level moisture. We've got all the dynamics for really quite a disaster. Either tornadic activity, flooding rain, storm surge, wind damage. There are so many hazards associated with Hurricane Irma. Category 4 Hurricane Irma, the latest from the National Hurricane Center. And we'll have another update at the bottom of the hour, but this is an incredible system. It's almost beyond words right now. Michael, Isa?
Yeah, and you, as you said, you predicted it'd be up to a 4 again once it got over that warm water. Indeed, it is, and a concern for everyone along that west coast of Florida. Karen McGinnis, thanks so much.
Yes, and you just said what I was going to mention is 288,000, and it hasn't even made landfall in the United States. It's still 70 miles away to the southeast of Key West, Florida. And just to mention that, Key West, they just reported a wind gust of 83 miles per hour. They're 70 miles away from the center of the hurricane, Grassy Key, a 74-mile-an-hour gust. In Miami just reported a 68-mile-an-hour wind gust. So as we go Sunday, right now, we're looking at some moderate to widespread power outages. And then we go through Sunday afternoon. Now, we still may not have landfall by Sunday afternoon. We may or may not. We'll get to that in just a second. And then it looks like the power outages primarily from that corridor from Orlando, Florida to Gainesville, towards Jacksonville, Florida, then up the coast towards Savannah, Georgia. So that's the scenario as it plays out now. But take a look at this. This has looked so impressive on the satellite imagery over the last few hours because this eye wall looks like it's really becoming much more concentric. When that happens, we know that it is strengthening. And you can see some of the orange and yellow bands around, I would say about 2/3 of the eye wall. We're seeing some of the stronger winds associated with that. And it's still 70 miles from Key West. So what are we anticipating now? Category 4. So it did increase in speed. from this latest information from the National Hurricane Center compared to its last advisory at 10 p.m., it increased in intensity 10 miles an hour. Ordinarily, I would say it's just a number. You should worry about the wind. You should worry about the storm surge. But this tells us it's really getting a lot stronger. And there is this tornado watch for South Florida, Brevard County, Palm Beach County, Dade County, extending over towards Collier. We're looking at the potential for tornadic activity. We've seen numerous reports of tornado warnings that have been issued. But look at some of the stronger bands right around Fort Pierce, along that I-95 corridor towards West Palm. We have seen some wind gusts that really are up near hurricane force. So they're strong tropical storm wind gusts. So what about that storm surge? Look at this, even on the eastern side. So if you were second guessing yourself, why did I leave the East Coast if it's affecting the West Coast? Because you have this onshore flow. Could expect the storm surge 6 to 8 feet, 10 to 12 feet. Some of these areas on the West Coast, we're looking at 10 to 15 feet, maybe 10, as much as 20 inches of rainfall is possible. When is landfall? Could be tomorrow night about midnight. Where? Maybe Sarasota, maybe Tampa, maybe Fort Myers. Our computer models are diverging on that right now. Michael, Isa?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, isn't it? And 15 feet, I mean, it's hard to get your head around what that's going to do. Karen, thank you. We'll check in with you a little later. Karen McGinnis there. Now, I want to go.
Bizarre found video and damage photos on social media.
Yeah, that's right. Irma is making it known that it is now in Florida. Take a look at this video. This was recorded in the Florida Keys just around midnight. Look at how heavy those winds are. Incredible. You can see the lightning, the heavy rain, and look at the palm trees as the fronds just lash in the wind. Incredible video there. It's a very scary sight down there right now. CBS Miami actually posted this video yesterday as Irma approached the Keys. You can see that heavy surf, the waves crashing on shore, and of course heavy winds and a lot of rain. And there's no beach or anything. The storm surge is just very dangerous there. And this is also in Miami on South Beach. Look at that. That's a stop sign blowing in the wind. Oftentimes we see these types of images when hurricanes blow through, and that just shows you how powerful this storm is. And it hasn't even made landfall yet, so you're seeing all the torrential rain and the wind. Trees are barely holding up, and of course that stop sign was going crazy in the wind there. And the camera almost seems to not be able to record the winds because they're so high, and obviously you don't want to step outside during something like this. And celebrities are even posting videos on Twitter. Take a look. This is from Enrique Iglesias. He posted this just before Irma lashed the city of Miami, telling everyone to stay safe. Now, let me show you some damage that these winds are leaving behind. Trees are actually getting knocked down. Look at that. That's a massive tree that has been uprooted. No surprise, really. You saw how strong those winds were. And since the road is soggy, or the ground is so soggy, we're going to be seeing a lot of this. Trees are also split in half. Winds are so strong, it knocked down this very large tree in someone's backyard. We don't think it hit someone's home, so that's the good news. And look at this. Debris scattered all across the sidewalk. You can see trees split in half. So this is why it's going to be dangerous to go outside during the storm. Electrical lines are down also. This is, I believe, in Sunny Isles, just outside of Miami. And this is only some of the damage, folks. We're going to be seeing a lot more widespread damage here in Southwest Florida as this storm moves through.
Corey, that is some amazing video. Every single piece of that video is just incredible. And it's really scary when you think about that. All that stuff is going to be coming here very shortly.
Oh, yeah. This is just the beginning, I'm sure, of seeing that damage video and pictures on social media, unfortunately.
Right.
But make sure to share it, and we'll definitely take a look at it. But we want to get to meteorologist Matt Devitt now. And
we have just under 300,000 people reportedly without power. Looks like the Florida Keys, no power because they've been seeing tropical storm force and hurricane force winds for the past 4 or 5 hours at least. All right. One of the things as I was standing here waiting to go on the air that I noticed is it looks like a cluster of thunderstorms, this part of the outer bands, kind of making its way towards Cape Canaveral, Kennedy Space Center. I'll be interested to see some of the observations coming out of that area as well. And very interesting, as Irma was hugging that northern coast of Cuba as a Category 5, then 4, really must have been terribly battered. But now we're less than 70 miles south-southeast from Key West, Florida. We've had some wind gusts right around Miami at 68-mile-an-hour winds. Fisher Island, I believe, had close to 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts. So tropical storm force winds. So did you second guess yourself as to whether you should have left the east coast of Florida where there were mandatory evacuations? You probably were once the track started changing. And it's still very frustrating to look at what's happening over the next 24 hours. So here it is. The eye is becoming very, it's warbling a little bit. It's one of those little perturbations. You've probably heard me. That's kind of my key word. When it doesn't follow that exact track, when it just makes a beeline for something, it just kind of wiggles a little bit because it's slowed down a lot too. So it's got a lot of thinking going on as it kind of navigates very warm waters here off the coast of Florida. It looks like the Florida Keys already seeing storm surge. They're not very high there, so could be inundated with lots of storm water as those waters rise, 8 to 10 feet possible. This is an RPM. This doesn't really show where the eye is going to be, but it just kind of shows you the wind field here. And where you see that purple, 60 miles an hour, where you see there's no color, that's in excess of 100 mile per hour winds. And then we look at Tuesday, and they're saying they've shut down some of the public schools already for the beginning of the week in many sections of Georgia because, frankly, there's still a lot of uncertainty as to what will happen with Category 4 Hurricane Irma. There is still this tornado watch out for the most dynamic part of the hurricane right now. This is very typical. And there's almost this east-west component where some of these stronger bands are coming on shore. But what we were looking at earlier, and I'm going to zoom in on this, there you can see already in Key West, we've seen winds in excess of hurricane force, 83 miles per hour reported at Key West. Still a little less than 70 miles away, and already hurricane force winds. Already starting to see the storm surge. And you've probably got another 6 or 8 hours before it even gets to Key West. So if you're already feeling the effects that strongly there, just think what happens when the eye, as a Category 4, maybe a Category 5 by the time it makes its way there, if you can only imagine how that impact is going to be. But from Melbourne to Fort Pierce, all the way down to Fort Lauderdale, tropical storm force winds, power outages reported here, Tampa, Sarasota. Sarasota, you're looking at more than likely, the computer models are saying, maybe landfall in Sarasota, but not until tomorrow night. Isa?
Tom?
Well, you were just talking, Anderson, about what it's going to look like when it gets to other states, so I thought I'd go right in to show the 21 models that make up the U.S. model, the GFS. Once it makes its way through southern Georgia,
have noticed as we've been driving around, and as we stop, it seems every time we stop, an officer comes and kind of checks to see what we're doing. So they are definitely on the lookout for someone who is not supposed to be out on the road right now and not supposed to be out in these areas. Obviously, they're probably worried about looters, people that are going to try and break into homes and whatnot. So they are vigilant at this point, looking for those things. And so we're obviously going to keep an eye out for other things that we see. We've just been driving around the area. There's a lot of cars parked over here. I'm assuming that a lot of people decided because this is a little bit higher ground, they'd park their car here. So just kind of driving around, seeing what we can find out. Of course, once we get any new details, we will pass that along to you. For now, we're live. Heather Lee, ABC Action News.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Officials in Polk County are preparing as best they can to keep residents safe during and after the storm.
Crews are there right now. They're getting ready. ABC Action News reporter Brenda Lise Gonzalez is at their headquarters. She joins us now with the latest.
This rain started to come down here just within the last hour or so. We started to feel the winds picking up earlier last night. You can see right here just outside this building, we've got the hurricane warning flags already up. Now, around Polk County, no county-wide curfew so far, but the city of Bartow issued a curfew Saturday afternoon that's going to extend until Hurricane Irma passes. That doesn't count for drivers, but they urge people not to head out unless they absolutely absolutely have to. A small staff is inside here right now around the clock. They'll be in full force and fully staffed by later today into tonight. So far, evacuations remain the same here around Polk County, mandatory for people living in mobile homes or in flood-prone areas. There are still 18 shelters open. Out of the 22 are at capacity, but 18 so far around the county you can still head to if you need to. Reporting in Polk County, Brenda-Lise Gonzalez, ABC Action News.
All right, Brenda-Lise, thank you. Let's take a live look right now at Fort Lauderdale. You can see there just those palm trees really swaying in the wind there. You can also see that the rain has also started falling there. The slick streets, you can see the reflection right there on the ground from those lights. Again, the winds really picking up in that area. That's because Greg D just told us a little while ago that there's a tornado warning.
That's right.
For that city.
Tornado warning. So let's go now to Greg, because Greg, that is the first tornado warning in our viewing area. Is that right?
That's just outside of our viewing area down in South Florida.
That should say just outside of it.
Yeah, just outside of the viewing area. Another thing I want to point out to you, forget to the tornadoes, the pressure has just dropped another 3 millibars to 928. That is a sign of the storm strengthening. There's a delay between pressure drops and wind speed increases. So I expect that in the next update we'll either maintain the winds or maybe even bump them up to 135. I also expect that the forecast track is probably going to be updated to a Cat 4 off the southwest Florida coast as this storm continues to intensify. There's the eye. So there's the center of circulation. The storms with the tornadoes are on the east side in these tropical storm force winds right now. We'll go through the radar quickly here. There's the eye wall. That's where the strongest winds are. And there are the storms. There's 2 of them actually now that are causing issues. So first, South Florida. There's Miami. This heavy rain bang moving into northern Broward and southeastern Palm Beach County. We've got a tornado warning now up until 4:15, so that's another 10 minutes, and it is for these cells down here coming into downtown Fort Lauderdale. You've got to look at the radar very carefully. Watch here. This is going to be a really quick, right there. There's a little area that moved onto downtown Fort Lauderdale where it goes bright green and red. Right near downtown. It could have just been a water spout offshore. It could have made landfall as a brief tornado, certainly possible. There are additional little areas here, little kinks where you ever see these little bright green pops in the radar. This is looking at wind data in the storm where there could be additional spin-ups. So they've actually just issued the entire coast here, and there are some additional spin-ups farther north up towards just south of West Palm. Now, up the coast, there is another tornado warning. This one, St. Lucie and Indian River County. Actually, this one was just canceled, so this one just got canceled. It was up until 4:15. There may have been a tornado in this storm. Watch the radar right there. So watch this area just to the west of Lakewood Park, just as it crossed out of Indian River into St. Lucie County. Little bright pop of green and red next to each other. Another little brief spin up. That maybe lasted 5 to 7 minutes. That's it. Really hard to pinpoint and track tornadoes with landfalling tropical systems because they're just like that. They're super fast. Still a broad rotation here. That's going to move on shore. Now we're going to turn our attention back to the coast and start watching for any additional spin-ups that are going to move on shore here. So this is Vero Beach, Indian River shores, headed down as you make your way down toward Fort Pierce. So it's north of Fort Pierce, south of Sebastian, where we had that one little spin up. Looks like it was just to the west around I-95, and then it moved inland toward 441 and weakened very quickly. Some of those cells could make their way into Highlands County. That's why you're under that tornado watch through noon. And then DeSoto County, you're also close enough now to the center of circulation where we could see some of those additional spin-ups. Closer to Tampa, it's a lighter rain. This is not as intense. It's more of a steady rain. The tornado threat is not with us yet. That's going to change too. I do expect that tornado watch to spread northward as we go through the day. We're getting very frequent updates on wind gusts out of Key West. I saw 72, went down to 58. Now it's 67 miles an hour. Jason just informed me that the highest one they've had so far this morning, 84 miles an hour. So there are definitely some strong winds battering the Keys in the center of Irma, just to the south and east of Key West. So here's the latest track. Now remember, this was issued at 11 o'clock. The Hurricane Center was thinking this is going to be a Cat 3 as it approaches Fort Myers, maybe Sarasota, maybe Northport. We're going to have to watch exactly where it makes landfall. Certainly Port Charlotte, all these locations are looking at effects of the storm. Sanibel Island north, really up towards Longboat and Siesta Key. The next update comes in within the next 52 minutes. It's going to be coming up between 4:45 and 5 o'clock, usually when they give us that update. That is an important one because that update will update the track. Although we update position, maybe even the pressure and intensity as they get information from radar sites that look at the storm and can see it minute by minute, these forecast tracks are only updated every 6 hours. So it's going to be 5 a.m. and 11 a.m., the next two updates, when maybe we'll see some changes to this, though I suspect any changes at this point will be minor. This is looking better. Our power outage index. Now, this may be a reaction from the power outage index to the new updated Category 3 intensity off the southwest coast of Florida. There's been a reduction in the amount of high power outage likelihood coverage. That may then ramp back up if the Hurricane Center keeps it as a Cat 4 as it approaches the southwest Florida coast. Let's take you through it. The tropical storm force winds in yellow, the hurricane force sustained winds in red. Look how far this storm stretches. I mean, we're going to be getting tropical storm force winds from Havana, Cuba, all the way up to the Space Coast. This is how wide this storm is. It's easily going to affect the entire peninsula with tropical storm force winds. The hurricane force winds in the red. By later on tonight, we're going to see hurricane force sustained winds all along the southwest and central Florida west coast. That means from Pinellas County down south through Manatee, Sarasota, down towards Collier County, the Fort Myers area, just north of Marco Island. The red areas where you could also see some wind gusts in excess of 100 miles per hour. They'll be coming up on Tampa, depending on where the storm is. If it stays a little farther over water, we're going to get stronger sustained winds in Tampa. If it goes in a little earlier into Florida, some of these winds may weaken as it heads to the north, but we are expecting at least minimal hurricane conditions in the Bay Area by midnight tonight heading into Monday. So that timing hasn't changed. 8 p.m. tonight to 8 a.m. Monday. That is the time period that we're watching all around the Bay Area for the harshest conditions from Irma. That's going to be the heavy rain, the isolated tornadoes, flash flooding, and wind gusts in excess of 100 miles per hour. By 5 o'clock Monday morning, the strongest winds, the hurricane force winds, are up towards the Nature Coast. That's Citrus over towards Hernando County. But notice, just about the whole map here is covered in yellow. Those are winds of 39 miles an hour or more. So early Monday, it's still going to be breezy. By 1:30 in the afternoon, the sustained tropical storm force winds should lift out of Tampa. So that's why we're saying Tampa about mid to late morning, maybe noon for the worst conditions, and then things improving after that. In Sarasota, you'll see tropical storm force winds subside probably sometime before noon. So you're going to be the first to get them. You're going to be the first to get out of them. And conditions won't improve in Citrus County until likely mid-afternoon. So it may take a little bit longer for some of those stronger winds to move in, and the whole thing moves up toward portions of Georgia. We've seen an adjustment in the probability of hurricane force winds since yesterday, a definite shift to the west, mainly along the darker reds here. You're talking 80 to 90% chance now of seeing sustained hurricane force winds from downtown Tampa, Clearwater, Palm Harbor, Largo, down through St. Pete, crossing the Sunshine Skyway into southeastern portions or southwestern portions of Hillsborough County, just south of Apollo Beach, headed down into the islands from Anna Maria all the way down through Sanibel. Hurricane force winds are likely. The other side of the story, that's the rain. 8 to 15 inches likely. Flash flood watches are up. We've already seen some flash flood warnings on the East Coast for some of those heavy rain bands that have also prompted some of those tornado warnings. I do expect some warnings for flash flooding in our area as well. Let's time out the rain with the wind for you. The rain bands continue through the morning hours. By noon today, already seeing wind gusts approaching hurricane strength down in Sarasota, Hardee, DeSoto, and Highlands County. Tropical storm force wind gusts easily around Tampa, places north. The rain north of Tampa may still be a little bit more hit and miss by noon with areas of heavy rain and light rain. South of the Bay Area, this should be a steady rain, and it's just going to pick up. You'll see the yellows and oranges go to oranges and reds. That's where the heaviest rain are. That's also where the strongest winds are. At 3:45 in the afternoon, hurricane conditions should be developing just south of us towards Naples and Fort Myers. Wind gusts well into hurricane strength, especially, let's say, south of the Hillsborough and Manatee County line. As we advance through the evening, some of the worst weather moving through later on tonight by 8, 9 o'clock. Wind gusts near 100 or more miles per hour. Winds gusting to 90 miles an hour in Tampa, maybe even more, depending on where their center of circulation is. We'll be watching for an isolated tornado or two. And the rain here, these reds and oranges, you're talking about rain falling at inches per hour in many cases. 1, 2, maybe more inches per hour. So flooded roadways, certainly possible. That's outside of any storm surge flooding. The wind here is offshore, so the beaches are not going to be experiencing surge at this time. Any flooding that we'll see is either going to be on the east-facing coastline of Pinellas County, maybe some of the bay waters getting pushed into downtown St. Pete, Safety Harbor, heading down south towards South St. Pete, maybe over on the east side of Fort DeSoto. Water is going to get pushed away from Apollo Beach, so I'm not expecting any Hillsborough County flooding there too. Bayshore, though, which faces east, may get some of that water pushed onshore. As you get winds of 90 miles an hour, we're actually probably going to see some waves crashing over the barricade there and over the railing on Bayshore onto the road. This is when you're going to be staying inside and just kind of waiting for the worst of it to move by. By 11:45, still an offshore flow generally north of the center. We could see the center of Irma, maybe an eye by then, pass over the Bay Area. Onshore winds developing down south. That's where we're going to start to watch for surges along the coast as winds could still gust 65 to 75 miles an hour. This is 4 o'clock in the morning on Monday. Notice northern Citrus County still gusting to near 100 miles an hour as the northern part of the eye wall moves by. Then by Monday, things quieting down, and finally into Tuesday, we're going to be recovering and probably cleaning up, but whether it's tree branches or other debris in your yard, may not really get to full power restoration mode until Tuesday. Remember, road crews and the power crews are not going to be able to get out there until winds get below tropical storm strength. Rainfall, I think these are really lowballing these numbers. Models have a really hard time handling some of these tropical systems. I think rainfall is going to be more towards 8 to 15 inches. I really think many of you are going to see double-digit rainfall, especially just to the east of where the eye tracks. So that's going to be inland areas, especially east of 75, Polk, Hardy, DeSoto, Highlands County. If you live in any of these inland areas and you flood during a heavy summer thunderstorm, I would be concerned about some flooding with this system, because this is going to be the equivalent of multiple summer thunderstorms all at once in still what is a pretty short period of time. Breaking it down for you region by region. By the way, all these maps also available on our social media channels. You can follow me at Greg D. Weather, Twitter and Instagram. Here are your Pinellas and Hillsborough County gusts. This is later on tonight, approaching midnight. We're gusting to near 90 miles an hour. Wind damage, coastal surge. 8 p.m. tonight to 8 a.m. Monday, the worst of it. North of Tampa, also wind gusts approaching 100 miles an hour as that eye moves through. This evening through at least noon on Monday. We may even have to push that to 3 p.m. depending on how quickly Irma gets out of Hernando and Citrus County. Flash flooding, wind damage, coastal surge, an isolated tornado possible here. Headed down towards Polk County, surge is not an issue for you. No coastline, but flash flooding and isolated tornadoes definitely are. Winds are going to be very gusty, probably approaching 90 miles an hour. Down towards Sarasota and Manatee County, wind gusts, look at these. We're talking about Category 3 or more potential gusts, even inland. This is inland Manatee County, Mayaca City, 114 or more. Northport, that turn on 75 as you head east briefly before turning back south towards Naples and Fort Myers. Very strong winds. This is going to be in that eye wall if it does pass through this area, just north and east of the eye wall. Surge is going to be an issue after these winds as the winds come back on shore. Notice all these strong gusts are offshore, pushing the Gulf back out to sea. Your worst conditions are going to start mid-morning today. We're going to get those tropical storm winds in, and then they're going to last through at least daybreak on Monday. And then also highly affected, Hardy, DeSoto, Highlands. Of course, you already got that tornado threat. That starts now. And then it's going to be the winds. You're going to be on the nasty east side of the storm. So you're definitely going to get some wind gusts, 70, 80, maybe 90, 100 miles per hour in some of the heavier rain bands. This is where you could see 10, 11, 12 inches of rain, and that could in itself be an issue. And, of course, widespread power outages in this area as well as we go into the rest of the afternoon and into the overnight as some of the heaviest rain from Irma continues to fall across the region. So we can go through some of these maps again as I back up the graphics at the end of my show here and all your updates. There you see the latest update on the winds. We'll go back to the radar and show you what's going on in terms of our region and some of the wind gusts and the storm. So we'll back it up all the way back to the look at the eye and the latest position of the storm. It has been wobbling from time to time. I don't want to read too much into some of these wobbles. The general northwest trend will continue. So there's Key West. There is the eye. That distance is shrinking. Key West now, the very edge of these clouds. This is going to be your hurricane force sustained winds. So the hurricane conditions are now moving into Key West, and they're going to be seeing the worst part of the storm starting now, and that's going to last for quite some time. Remember, Irma here is only moving at about 6 miles per hour. So it's going to take much longer for it to pass Key West than it will for it to pass Tampa. By the time it gets to Tampa, I expect the forward motion to be more than 10 miles per hour, maybe even twice as fast as it's moving right now. So it's going to take a lot less time to get through the Bay Area than it will through the Keys. These folks, I hope they evacuated. They're going to be battered here. The worst conditions are actually, looks like, going to be to the east of Key West. So the central and upper Keys are the ones that are going to see the strongest south and southeast winds. This is the strong part of the storm. Key West may, though, experience part of the eye wall. Depending on how it jogs, this is going to be very important to them, will determine the conditions that they're going to get. So there's Key West right there. They're right at the edge of this inner band. You see this inner band here, green? This is the beginning of sustained hurricane force winds. Earlier, it was about 40 miles away. It may be now 35 or even 30 miles. They're well into tropical storm force winds. Here's a close look at the eye. This is where you're going to see the strongest wind gusts. So if the eye takes more of a northerly jog and, let's say, passes out here between Marathon and Key West, they're going to be on the slightly weaker side of the eye wall, maybe wind gusts up to 130. If the eye wall jogs a little farther west, they're going to be in this northern and eastern quadrant of the storm, and they could see wind gusts above 130 on Key West briefly as Irma passes through. This is where the strongest winds are. The most damaging winds probably within the first 10 or 15 miles of the eye. Outside of that, there are hurricane force winds too. Those winds not as destructive as the ones right around the eye wall. Tornado threat continues. I do expect these tornado watches to just progress up through the state. I think there's going to be watches for South Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama as Irma continues on the northeast track. There are also going to be feeder bands that are going to develop off the Atlantic on the east side of the storm well into the Carolinas. So I think those are the ones that are also going to be a tornado threat for places in inland South Carolina and portions of eastern Georgia. Atlanta down to Columbia and Charleston, we're going to see some feeder bands feed in, and that could cause an isolated tornado or two. The tornado warning for portions of Broward and Palm Beach County, those have expired. That was up until 4:15. We are no longer looking at a tornado warning here. That tornado warned storm is moved inland, but there is still a special marine warning offshore because there are these little bright green areas that are moving onshore, and any one of those, if they spin up a little stronger, could produce that brief waterspout, if not even a brief tornado around downtown Fort Lauderdale. Not the threat that we're seeing here right now. That's mainly east and south of I-4, west of I-4 towards 75. Areas of light rain, some isolated downpours, but nothing too bad right now. We had a tornado warning earlier. This also has expired in St. Lucie and Indian River County. That is now gone. This one did look a little bit more convincing right there, right to the west of Lakewood Park. Watch this green and red right there. Just kind of popped right there at the county line of St. Lucie County over toward Indian River County. Could have been a brief tornado. Not as highly populated west of 95 as it is to the east. So hopefully that just happened over maybe some trees and some woods there. To the west of 95. Additional rain now moving into the Bay Area. We're starting to pick up rain on the east side of Tampa. It looks like the rain is moving across the bay. So Pinellas County, you're going to start your light rain this morning. That's going to start in the next hour or so. Downtown Tampa, South Tampa, you're picking up the rain. Thornado Sassa over towards Carrollwood, over towards West Chase. The rain is moving in. All right, we're going to regroup in the Weather Center, get you some new information, look at some new data, and we'll be back with you with another update coming up in just a few minutes, guys.
All right. Thank you, Greg. Always comforting to have those two guys, Greg, Jason, in the Weather Center. We are continuing to monitor the conditions right now all throughout the Bay Area.
ABC Action News reporter Brian Callahan shows us what it's like right now in Clearwater.
Things still fairly quiet out here on the streets of Clearwater. We're seeing scattered showers throughout the day. Most people that have stayed in town still at home or in their hotel rooms. People who may be planning to make last-minute preparations might be out of luck because every hardware store we've come by, Lowe's, Home Depot, all have pallets out here in front of the doors, signs saying they're closed. Similar story at grocery stores and drugstores, all with signs saying they're hoping to reopen Monday at the earliest if the storm allows. So the people who haven't headed out of town, who are planning to stay here and fight through Irma, may have to do so with the supplies they have on hand. In Clearwater, Brian Callahan, ABC Action News.
Live in the Clearwater area. Know this, all access to Clearwater Beach is going to be suspended at 6 o'clock this morning.
Not that you want to be at the beach anyway, but it does remain under a mandatory evacuation order. That is something we want to make very clear. ABC Action News reporter Sarah Hollenbeck joins us now live from Clearwater with what conditions are like there. Sarah.
Well, they are taking this very seriously. There are 11 checkpoints from Tierra Verde all the way to the Dunedin Causeway, including where we are right here, Clearwater Beach. That means no one will be able to get into here after 6 a.m., so just about 2 hours or so. And that means that a lot of these folks, even if they left something here in Clearwater or Indian Rocks Beach or wherever it might be, they will not be able to get back onto the island because the deputies say it is just too scary. It's going to be way too dangerous and they will not be able to save you. Now, I want to show you this too. Take a look at these hotels. I have never seen them this dark. Now, yes, it is 4:30 in the morning, but I've done plenty of morning live shots where you see a couple different windows, you know, with lights. Here it is dark and I could hear a pin drop if I dropped it right here. It is so quiet, so dark, and we have not seen a soul on Clearwater Beach other than one police officer over there. That is the only person we've seen out here. So that's good. That means that people are following the rules and they say, hey, if you're on the islands right now, if you can, please get off them as soon as possible because after 6 a.m., no one allowed back in because deputies say it's going to be a scary situation out here. Reporting live on Clearwater Beach, I'm Sarah Hollenbeck, ABC Action News.
Thank you, Sarah. We want to take you now to Isabel Rosales. She is near the Sunshine Skyway, which we told you about an hour ago was closed. She's as close as she can get to the bridge. I think I hear her right there. Isabel, you there?
Yeah, I can hear you guys perfectly. Yes, you can mention this is as close as we can get. We're still about a mile away from the entrance of the fishing pier here to the Skyway. And as you can see, they're taking no chances. They've got orange cones up. They had flares running up until a couple of minutes ago and signs indicating that drivers should exit off here to exit 17. Now, I did speak with a Florida state trooper here who tells me that once it hits 40 miles per hour, that's it. They have a state mandate to shut down the bridges. And I mean, look at right now, these gusts of winds just hitting us in the face right now. And Irma still 100 miles away from hitting Florida. So imagine how much worse this is going to get heading into tomorrow. But what was really concerning when I spoke with the troopers, he mentioned just 10 more miles per hour, and that is the deadline that they have set for first responders to leave. Once it hits 50 miles per hour, they are out. That is the point that Governor Rick Scott was talking about. That is the point where you will not have 911 systems in place where they cannot get to you. Just 10 more miles per hour at 50. That's honestly crazy. That's concerning here, how close we are already to it. But obviously, going south is not something that most drivers want to do at this point. So heading into this direction, not that big of a deal that the Skyway is closed right now. Of course, more of an inconvenience for those trying to head north. However, what we've seen is a lot of this. I know it's early in the morning, and of course, this is a ghost town out here right now, but we have seen it pretty clear throughout the day. Instead, where we're seeing the points of heavier traffic are in town, in the middle of the town, in through the residential areas. People honestly trying to find gas. A challenge for our own crew. We, for more than an hour, tried to find a pump that would work. A lot of them taped off or had caution tape or police blocking the entrance. But what was really a saving grace for us was all in the palm of our hands, this Gas Buddy app that tells you in real time which pumps are available, which have gas and which don't. But when you see it marked off like this in red, that means there's no diesel, there is no regular, and that there is no premium. This right here can save you a lot of time and grief and avoiding these pumps that are just not in working order. However, a piece of warning, it is crowdsourced, meaning it is not 100%, but nonetheless, this little tool can save you some time. Live in St. Pete, I'm Isabel Rosales, ABC Action News.
Live from the station taking action for you, this is ABC Action News.
Good morning to you. You are watching our extended coverage of the preparation for Hurricane Irma. On the left side of your screen is West Palm Beach right there. Conditions there you see, it's kind of frozen right now. But again, we are in the middle of this storm.
Right.
You know, the storm is approaching, so we're going to see a lot of this stuff, a lot of these shots freezing. But then look at Fort Lauderdale. You see the breeze right there on the palm trees starting to blow there because that storm is so large. As it gets close, we're all beginning to feel the effects of it.
Yeah, and what we're going to try and do throughout the morning is give you those live looks at those locations. And again, you know, conditions there are going to start to deteriorate, and when they do, we might lose the feed. But we're going to go to it as often as we can. Speaking of conditions, as we begin here at 4:30, we have Jason Adams, meteorologist Jason Adams, over in the Weather Center with an update on Irma's track. Jason.
And of course, meteorologist Greg D. He's here with me this morning, and he just told me that the National Weather Service in Key West basically sending out a tweet to the people that stayed in Key West that ignored the mandatory evacuation orders that the time is now. The worst is happening for Key West. Hunker down, don't go outside, all that stuff. They're looking at a landfall there within the next 3 to 4 hour period as the center of Irma looks to move directly overhead of Key West and then eventually up towards our coast. No changes to the warnings. Everybody here into the peninsula all the way back towards Tallahassee currently under a hurricane warning. We expect to see our conditions starting to deteriorate pretty quickly late this morning into the afternoon. That's when tropical storm force winds are going to start to move in. It looks like between 10 and noon south of Tampa, around noon in and around Tampa Bay, and then around 2 p.m. or so at the latest for those of you north of town. But we could see some squalls that have tropical storm force gusts even prior to that. And then the hurricane conditions, unfortunately, they start to move in later on. Now, everybody wants to see these because, of course, the spaghetti models, the plots, have been showing us where Irma's forecast track has been going, and there's been no change from yesterday to today, with the bulk of them continuing to hug our west coast here. So, unfortunately, not seeing any changes in the track, and with the track being basically overhead or just offshore, our surge potential has picked up. Right now, there is a storm surge warning for the entire western coast of Florida, including all of us here into the Bay Area, including in Tampa Bay. And that means that we are expecting to see surge potentially increase from 4 to 6 feet as we go into the afternoon hours. So again, a storm surge warning in effect for the entire west coast, and areas of yellow and also brighter green, those indicate the higher rises in water. And again, the actual forecast from the National Weather Service here in Tampa Bay shows that we're looking at a 4 to 6 foot surge. But we could, of course, see that a little bit higher inside Tampa Bay with the shallow water and also what we call the funneling effect. When all the water eventually comes into the bay, it gets to these specific points here on the north side of the bay, and that causes it to rise a little bit more in those areas as well. The timing on the surge, we'll see a little bit of that late today, but until the storm actually passes to our north and we get the winds back in off the Gulf, that won't occur until overnight tonight into tomorrow. So surge, while we'll see a slow rise in water potentially today, it's not really a concern for us just yet. That will be our main concern as we go from today into tomorrow, mainly tonight into tomorrow. So Key West landfall happening around 8 o'clock. They're seeing tropical storm force winds. The highest gust in Key West has been 84 miles per hour this morning. For us, the tropical storm force winds look to arrive again late this morning and into the early afternoon, but the hurricane force winds, they'll start to pick up, especially after 4 p.m. south of Tampa, and then from south to north, we'll gradually see those winds increasing area wide, and all of us, especially along the coast and including us here in Tampa, have the chance to see those winds gusting and exceeding 100 miles per hour. So that's what we're looking at as far as this system goes right now. So here's the latest satellite image of the storm, and notice there's Key West. Here are the islands, and then here's South Florida. There's the eye of Irma. This has re-strengthened back to a Category 4 storm. It continues to move very slowly off towards the north-northwest, and that north-northwesterly movement is going to continue all day long, and that's why we are expecting it to get very close, if not make landfall over our coast later on today. Winds 130 miles per hour in this storm. Now last night, when you went to bed, it was a Category 3 hurricane, but that has since changed and now it's back to a Category 2 storm. So a little bit of a radar image problem coming out of Key West, not surprising because of course they're now seeing those 80+ mile per hour wind gusts. You can see a little bit of a weird image showing up there, but clearly there's the eye wall, the north and eastern side, the worst side, and unfortunately for us, as long as the forecast holds, that's a part of the eye that's going to be moving through our area late today into tonight. Check this out. Tropical storm force winds extend out from the center almost 200 miles. So in Miami and Fort Lauderdale, they're already seeing sustained tropical storm force winds, even though the storm is so far away. Hurricane force winds extending out from the center a good 60 to 75 miles. So thankfully, it's not any wider than that. We'd like to see that shrink as we go through the day today, but that doesn't look to be the case. So even if it stays just offshore Pinellas County and Sarasota and Manatee counties later on today, all of us will still see those very strong winds along our coastal counties, and inland you'll likely see those hurricane force gusts, maybe not sustained winds, but gusts, and it's ultimately dependent on this track. Also new this morning, we have a tornado watch that goes now through pretty much the rest of the day today. It's set to expire at noon, but with the duration of Irma being so long, we'll see this continuing for us and extended for us as we go through the day today. Also, DeSoto and Highlands County, you are in this tornado watch. The rest of us not there just yet, but we'll likely see that extended north and also expanded as we go through the rest of the day today, and also extended time-wise too. So here's where we've had a couple of tornado warnings already this morning. Just had a spin up near Fort Lauderdale. Not a confirmed tornado just yet, but the radar looked pretty condemning as far as that goes with the tornado risk that was out in Fort Lauderdale earlier this morning. There's also a little bit of spin happening offshore. This is the velocity mode. This is when we look at the winds inside of the storm, and you'll see these little areas of bright green that keep showing up. A little one there, a little one there, a little one there. This is a special marine warning, so they're still continuing to warn the Fort Lauderdale area for rotation offshore, and that could eventually give them some concerns as far as tornadoes go later in the next 30, 45 minutes. Would not be surprised to see more tornado warnings down there. And unfortunately, that's a prelude to what's going to happen to our area later today, especially for those of you in our inland communities. You're already seeing the rain moving through Polk County this morning. We've also had a few showers on my way into work when I came in around 2 o'clock this morning here through Tampa. So the rain's here. We'll continue to see it increasing in coverage and also in intensity. Of course, with the radar, red, yellow, and orange, that's the heaviest rainfall. That's where the thunderstorm risk will be. That's also where the flash flooding risk will be. And check this out, near Fort Pierce, we do already have a flash flood warning out this morning. And I'm showing you all this stuff over on the East Coast now because it's quiet here at the moment, but this is what's heading our way within the next 4 hours. We'll likely start to see some of this activity moving through. And here's where that area of spin was. Greg put this radar image in here a second ago. Notice right around Interstate 95 to the west of Lakewood Park. This was where a tornado warning was earlier today, and you can clearly see that evident on the radar with the bright green, the bright red right next to each other indicating rotation. That's what we're going to be looking for on the radar here to see if we have any tornado warnings issued later on. If we show you a radar image like this over your community, you definitely want to, already you're in your safe spot for the hurricane, but even more so because we could potentially see a tornado within the hurricane. So here's some of the lighter rain now moving through Hillsborough County. Again, some gusts potentially as high as 25 to 35 miles per hour this morning, but the strongest winds not here just yet. Just to the east though, so from eastern Polk County and then all the way over to the East Coast, this batch of moderate to heavy rainfall can easily have tropical storm force gusts in them. What happens is the winds are higher aloft, and when you get these heavier downpours, what happens is they pull the wind down to the surface. So within the heavier downpours, that's why in thunderstorms you get those stronger winds in the storms more so than a light rain threat. That's what we're going to be looking at with that area of rain continuing to move off towards the west. Already seeing that now in Sebring and Wauchula, just to the north of Arcadia as well, and this will eventually make it down towards the coast. Take a look at some of the peak wind gusts right now. Now we are looking at 30 to 40 to 50 to 60 mile per hour winds showing up on this map, but like we said a second ago, Key West has already had a gust to 84 miles per hour. That 84 mile per hour gust was in the last hour, and the center of Irma is getting even closer to Key West. So we'll likely see these numbers really climbing as we go through the next 18 hours, especially down there, but certainly up here at home as well. And we always talk about the cone, the forecast cone. Look how thin the forecast cone has gotten compared to what it was a couple of days ago, now that we're more confident that this storm is definitely going to graze us here in the West Coast. Yesterday, the center line was over Tampa, but now it's over Pinellas County, also right along the coast from Anna Maria Island through Siesta Key down south. That center line, as important as it is, we don't want you to just focus on it, because everybody along and east of this storm, which includes all of us here in the Tampa Bay area, will see significant impacts still from this storm, and along our coastal communities, including the Interstate 75 corridor, Tampa, St. Pete, Sarasota, all of us are definitely going to see at least 74 mile per hour winds. More likely, though, those gusts will exceed 100 late today into tonight. So coming up in our next update, Greg's going to update you on the timing of this. We'll talk more about when this is expected to get here, and also we've got to look at the flash flood potential too. Seeing the flash flooding out towards our east now, that's what's heading our way later on today. Guys?
All right, thank you, Jason. Thousands of people are taking shelter at local schools in Manatee County in preparation for this storm. But if you are still planning on going, know this. We're hearing that several are already full.
ABC Action News reporter Ryan Smith is live in Bradenton at one that's filling up or maybe near capacity. Ryan, good morning.
Hey guys, that's exactly right. Good morning to you. Hundreds of people right this minute are inside Bayshore Elementary School right here in Bradenton, ready to ride out this storm. Now, we want to mention we can't actually take you inside to show you the scene inside because, of course, many of these folks are sleeping, resting up before Hurricane Irma strikes. But I did want to step out of the way and show you this right here. Just helps us paint a little picture of the activity we're seeing here. Cars are packed in this parking lot in every space possible, and this is only just a small slice of what we're seeing. From front to back, there is no wasted space here. People are jam-packed tight in here because they sought out shelter to this elementary school. About 1,400 people total here are staying overnight, getting ready, preparing for Hurricane Irma. There's quite a few people still awake even at this early morning hour. They tell me they are simply anxious and just trying to keep their minds off of the hurricane and what it could potentially do to their homes, their property, family members who did not come here to the shelter with them, with conversations. They're playing games. We spoke with one mother just moments ago who did not hesitate to bring her family here because she thought it's the only way she can keep them safe.
We live in Bayshore Gardens and the water is right there. And we're really worried about the storm surge, especially with the way it's moving westerly. And they're saying on the news that it could push water all the way in our house, and we were worried about the flooding.
And we want to bring to the attention to many folks here in Manatee County who did decide to stay home. Manatee Public Safety tweeting out this reminder tonight. Once tropical force winds begin, it may be up to 72 hours before first responders can assist you, of course, based on the weather. So they're advising if you can get to a safe place, even at this hour, we're seeing very light winds and light rain. Get to that safe place. Get to a shelter. There are still several that are still open that have plenty of spaces available. There are 23 across Manatee County, only 5 of which I'm told are at max capacity at this hour. That's the latest reporting live this morning in Bradenton. I'm Ryan Smith for ABC Action News.
All right, thank you, Ryan. You know, lots of people are hunkering down in shelters in Pasco County as well.
Action News reporter Eric Waxler, he's live there at the Emergency Operations Center. Eric, any new news, anything to report there?
Well, James, I can tell you that right now the number of Pasco County residents that are in those shelters is 15,500 and change. 15,500 and change. That's how many people, again, in those shelters all around Pasco County. There are about 20 or so shelters that are set up and running, and Some new ones have opened up, and there is room. So if you wake up in the morning and decide that it is finally time to get out, there are places to go. You can see we are in the Emergency Operations Center here in Newport Richey, and in that room there are people from all sorts of different agencies. Now, as you're seeing here, this is the shelter at River Ridge Middle School, and Fran, who is 94, we interviewed her earlier and found out that, you know, she didn't have an air mattress to sleep on. She was basically just sitting in a chair, and you can imagine spending all night just sitting in a folding chair, and then who knows how many hours she would be there. Well, we put out the word that she needed an air mattress, and sure enough, a man named Douglas brought her one. We enlisted some teens to help pump it up. Fran was thrilled. But that was just the beginning. More Pasco County residents started showing up to River Ridge Middle with air mattresses, regular mattresses, bedding, even neck pillows. They brought them for Fran and the other older people in the shelter who should be able to find at least a little comfort now.
He wanted that to go out to as many people as possible. Now, the Keys were one of the first places to evacuate. We've got those brave soldiers there in the National Weather Service office who are going to be battered. They've already been battered for many hours. But as Category 4 Hurricane Irma moves across the Florida Keys over the next few hours or so, then on its way towards the
just couldn't believe it. There's still time for you to help.
Maybe in the vicinity of Fort Myers, Marco Island, perhaps
when you wake up,
not until Sarasota, Bradenton, Tampa, St. Pete. But then look what happens even going into Monday. And already a good portion of Georgia is under a tropical storm watch. They've closed a number of public schools across North Georgia. This is what has been very troubling. Now it's about 55 miles to the southeast of Key West, Florida, looking very impressive on the radar imagery as it swirls with winds of 130 miles an hour. Now, because it is going to interact with this landmass, it may lose some of its energy. But we've been saying all along, don't focus on the winds, on the rain, all of those specifics.
Fully staffed right now.
We're worried about all of those combined and the storm surge. There was a report earlier from a woman in the Keys who said there's already 8 inches of water in my house. The obvious question is, was that rainfall? She said, no, we really haven't had that much rain. At that point, she said, this is the surge. This is the surge you talk about. So it is remarkable. And literally, we saw some tornado warnings out right around Fort Pierce and Interstate 95. This area from Melbourne all the way down towards Miami is in a tornado watch. We'll see some of those tornado warnings spin up. But the worst is yet to come, and we're still looking at 55 miles away from the first U.S. landfall in the Florida Keys.
Remind you, troopers are working 12-hour shifts to keep you safe.
Karen, for those people sitting watching us right now who are jittery and quite nervous about what is happening in the Northwest and the West Coast in particular, Florida, can you give them any insight as to exactly a rough time? I know rough times are very hard to estimate, as you've pointed out throughout the last 5 hours or so. Any sort of indication of what time they should be feeling it in, for example, if you are in the West Coast?
The West Coast of Florida really, unfortunately, is probably going to be in the worst position of all.
Right now, though, we want to show you the Sunshine Skyway Bridge.
Over the waters here, like this, you're going to be in that upper right front quadrant of the hurricane, the worst portion of the hurricane to be in.
The bridge is closed.
It will probably make these little jogs all along the coast. There have been a lot of comparisons to Donna back in 1960 when it just kind of paralleled the coast and went in the vicinity just to the north of Marco Island. Devastating hurricane there. There have been a lot of parallels, but we know that you just can't cumulatively definitively say all hurricanes are going to act this erratic.
We are keeping in touch with them.
Irma,
No troopers are
it's
out
just
there on
been
the roads,
exceptional
keep you
on
safe,
so
get
many
you to
levels.
where
But
you
I
need to
think
go, but
we
time
think
really
landfall
is,
near
running out.
Sarasota,
This is it.
to answer your
Roads are
question
wet.
more
You can see right
specifically,
here,
perhaps
the
around
raindrops there on the
midnight.
camera. This
But
is going
everybody
to be,
needs to stay on
at
top of this
Craft Road,
because it
and
has
you
been
can see that there is
unpredictable
nobody
from the
out
first
there,
day.
right
Back to
now.
you.
No
Lisa.
crashes, no breakdowns on any of the majors.
Unpredictable,
I
and
have
so
been
don't
watching
get
all of them this
complacent.
morning
Thank you
from
very much,
I-4,
Karen McGuinness.
I-75,
Michael, back to you.
I-275. But again, just keep in
All
mind
right,
that
Issa,
the bridge,
appreciate that.
the skyway
Thanks
is
so
closed.
much. Good
And I
information
do
as always.
expect
And we
now
get
with
good
Irma,
information too
coming
from James
here or
Reynolds.
near here,
He is a storm
that the
chaser,
other
and he's
bridges,
joining
the
us now
Gandy,
on the
the
line
Campbell,
from
Howard
Naples
Franklin,
on the
possibly
west
even
coast
the
of
Bayside
Florida.
Bridge
And
to close
James, Naples
as
is a
well.
place that
So you
is
need to get to where you need
been
to be
hit
this
by
morning,
hurricanes
because at some
before,
point you
been
are not
damaged
going to be
by
able to
hurricanes
easily
before,
get from
and
Pinellas
in this case
into
is
Hillsborough or
worried
Hillsborough
about
into
a storm surge
Follow
as
me on
well.
Twitter
Fill us
at
in on the
Big
conditions
Traffic.
there.
I will answer any of your questions.
Yeah, absolutely,
I will help you
Michael.
through
The storm surge is the major big
Right,
threat
and you know,
here
you
in
just
Naples.
mentioned those bridges. We also
Right
just
now,
got word
the
that
wind is
officials are stopping
slowly starting
people
to pick up. We're
as
getting
they try to
sporadic
approach the
rain
bridge
showers,
just yet
but
to
really
keep.
it's not a
That's
patch
right, and
on
they're going
what's
to probably
going
keep
to
doing
come
this as long as they
later
can,
into the
as
daylight
long as
hours
conditions
today.
permit them to
When
do it. We have our Wendy Lane there right now. Let's go to her and see what she's seeing.
Torrential rain.
Wendy?
And then once that storm center starts moving to the north, that's when the big storm surge threat becomes real. And those winds shift onshore and pile the water onto the coast.
People, you can see over here they
Yeah,
kind
it could
of
be
have
disastrous for Naples, also Tampa further up the coast. We're looking at video now. The place looks deserted. What is the atmosphere like there?
You know, why are you going over there?
Yeah,
You have an ID with you.
a lot of businesses boarded up, homes
they
all
are
boarded up,
allowing
and people just
residents who
finishing up
need to go over
their
there
final
for a good
preparations,
reason
really. We did go
pass and
to
go
a
across
local
this
restaurant which
bridge.
had
But if you just want to come out here and sightsee
I think everyone's
and see the
just getting in a
storm, you're not
last
going to get
good warm
past these
meal
guys
before the
because
storm crashes
that would,
ashore and
it's
knocks out
just
the power
not
and
smart to do
makes for a
something
pretty
like that
uncomfortable
because
aftermath.
this area has been under that mandatory evacuation.
And James,
so
just very
we've
briefly,
been
I mean,
out here all morning.
you do
It started
this. I mean,
raining
you
a couple
wander
hours
the
ago.
world chasing storms. When you
It's
take the
been a
big
nice,
picture
light,
view
steady
of
rain
Hurricane
now,
Irma,
and again,
what
I
do you
keep
think?
saying,
How does it stack up?
It's breezy.
Yeah, this is
and
a
then
big
all
deal.
of a sudden,
You should
these
never,
wind gusts will pick up.
ever
You
treat
can see
a
these
major
palm trees over
hurricane or
here blowing
typhoon
in the
or
wind,
cyclone
and they
approaching
kind of come
land
up out of
lightly.
nowhere,
But the
and
big
some of
deal
them
here
are
is
scarily
Florida has
strong.
not been hit by a major
And guys,
hurricane
this is just the
since
beginning. So
2005.
we've
That's a long
seen
time ago. And then you compound that
branches
with the threat
on the
of storm
road,
surge,
all kinds
the
of
very shallow
just
waters of the
kind
Gulf
of
of Mexico.
tree debris
a lot
as of right
new
now,
people
just along
living
the
here
road.
who haven't
Nothing
been through a hurricane
too
before.
dangerous yet, but
it's
we
a
did
big
see a
deal,
street
and
sign
it's
that
going
was
to
knocked
be
over. That
a
was
very,
from the
very
wind.
major impact
So this is all just
over the next
beginning
day or two.
of this storm.
James Reynolds there in Naples, Florida. Appreciate it as always. Thank you. We're going to take a short break here. When we come back, as Florida gets ready for Irma, we'll go through one family's destroyed home in the Caribbean. Of course, the Caribbean already has been hit. A lot of devastation in some neighborhoods there.
Check out our website,
That's when we come back.
abcactionnews.com, and we have a list of shelters on there. Also, call the shelters first. Make sure they're not full because they're filling up fast.
He's one of the youngest billionaires in the world.
All right, thank you, Wendy. We've been telling
married
you
to
all
supermodel
day, all
Miranda
morning,
Kerr.
and even yesterday
Evan
about
Spiegel's
just
stake in
wonderful acts of
Snapchat hit
kindness
$6
and
billion
generosity,
the
but
day
of
its
course,
parent
there's also
company
the other
IPO'd.
spectrum. Hopefully just a
It
few.
gained fame
We do
as
have
the
reports
disappearing
of
messenger,
looting across
but
the Bay
now
Area.
Snap
This is not a
is calling
situation
itself
where one
a
bad apple's
camera
going to ruin
company,
for the bunch. I can promise
also
you that. But
making
we do want to go to Heather
spectacles
Lee,
for snapping
joins us from
videos
Pinellas
on the
Park.
go.
And Heather, what
Spiegel
have you
quit
found out about
university before getting a
possible
degree,
looting here?
so he could set up Snapchat with co-founder Bobby Murphy, just
James,
months
it's
before
kind
his
of a complicated
21st birthday.
situation. We were
It
hearing
was such a
reports that there was
success that
several
Facebook
different,
reportedly offered to buy it
Pinellas
in
Park. Right now,
2013
we're on
for
US
$3 billion. But Snapchat said
Pinellas
no.
Park,
Now they
and
have
we
over
have,
100
been
million users every day. And what started as a disappearing picture app is now a fixture on the New York Stock Exchange. And that's Evan Spiegel in 60 seconds.
That there was a burglary here.
This month on Inside the Middle East, join Becky Anderson and meet the people shaping culture across the region. How Egypt's challenges inspired the country's contemporary dancers.
The revolution make me to think out of the box, how to be crazy. You know?
Inside the Middle East, Wednesday on CNN in association with MISC.
Out on the road. They've been following us all night long. every single time we've stopped, they've stopped and said, oh, okay, you're the media. We understand why you're out here. But they are looking for people and wondering why anyone would be out in the middle of the night, early morning hours ahead of a major storm. So that is something to keep in mind. Unless you need to be out on the roads, you don't want to be out, because they're having to go check on every single person they see, again, to make sure that that bad things aren't happening, looting situations and whatnot. So we're going to continue to follow this situation, see if we can learn any more details. But of course, as soon as we get those, we'll bring those to you as well. We're live in Pinellas Park. Heather Lee, ABC Action News.
All right. Thank you, Heather. We want to take you again live to Fort Lauderdale. The last time that we saw this, those palm trees were swaying a little bit, but we can tell right now that they've actually picked up. It looks like the wind is getting stronger in that area. Those palm fronds are really moving around right now. We also told you earlier, maybe about an hour or so ago, that there is a tornado warning for Fort Lauderdale. Greg and Jason were telling you about that.
Yeah, there was about an hour ago, there was a report of a tornado warning, the first of, unfortunately, many we're going to be talking about throughout that area and our viewing area. We've got our Greg D standing by, and we're kind of standing by waiting on that 5 a.m. update on the hurricane track, Greg.
Yeah, and if we get one while I'm doing this update, Jason, just get my attention and give me the latest information. We'll go back to the forecast track. I'm not showing you this because I don't want you to go to the beach, but this graphic has the hour-by-hour wind data built into it, our beach forecast. These are sustained winds forecast for Pinellas County through 8 o'clock, starting off at 31 miles an hour this morning, climbing to 39 miles an hour by 2, and between 2 p.m. and 8 p.m., the winds more than double, sustained at near hurricane force by 8 o'clock tonight. This is going to ramp up very quickly once the center of Irma gets closer to us. That graphic, updates on warnings. If you can't watch us on your TV, you can take us on your mobile device. I've tweeted out the links, posted them on my Facebook pages, at Greg D Weather. That's where you get the latest information. There are the pages right there, so you can check it out and make sure you're staying up to date with us. We're not going anywhere until Irma is out of the picture. May even stay with you afterwards as we try to figure out what the storm leaves behind. This is the data that I'm waiting to update here in the next 5 to 10 minutes. If we do get new information, we're going to go back to that graphic and take a look at not only the new intensity data, if that's changed, but of course the updated track. There's the eye wall. Looks a little ragged there on the satellite, but you look at it on radar, and it's not that ragged at all. We are still looking at a well-defined eye. Here it is, very round, strong northern and eastern side of the wall. There's Key West. So the National Weather Service out of Key West basically tweeting out their final warning. The worst is moving in now. You need to stay inside and shelter in place until the storm moves by. And at a forward motion of only 6 miles per hour, this is going to be a very slow and very persistent eye wall that's going to move through Key West. They are going to be getting this for several hours. I certainly would not want to be there on the island in that type of wind. It's just not going to sound very good. The wind's going to be howling. Already saw wind gusts to 84 miles an hour there. They're likely just going to increase over the next couple of hours. The hurricane force winds just moving into Key West now. They're right around this inner ring right here. Tropical storm force winds, they go out more than 150 miles either side of the storm. That's why the entire state of Florida is going to feel the brunt of this one. And on the east side, where those feeder bands are, that's where you get these little mini spin-ups. So a tornado watch now, Highlands and DeSoto County, everyone east of I-4 south. These are going to head up north, probably into Georgia and the Carolinas, along with Irma. Now I think the inner eye wall here, about 35 miles away from Key West, Miami 115. It's not going to head towards Miami. It's going to head over towards Key West, very close to that island, and it may even hook a little farther north as it makes that turn. Your strongest Category 4 winds are going to be in this red area on radar. This is the eye wall, and it's the north and east side of this eye wall where these darker reds are showing up. This is where the Category 4 winds are. Outside of this 10-mile stretch, maybe even 5 miles, there are hurricane force winds, but they drop off very quickly. So as long as you don't get underneath this, I think any kind of wind effects are going to be minimal in our area. It's really going to be the track of this eye wall that's going to determine where the biggest impacts from plain wind are. That eye is just 25 miles wide. It's really a compact eye, very small, and it's heading northwest, and that's exactly where Key West is. So that's where your Cat 4 gusts are going to be, right here, not inside the eye wall, right around it. It's already moved in this radar image. We have to update that label there. Take a look at the strongest rain band right now from this storm. Man, Fort Lauderdale, northern Broward, southern Palm Beach County. This rain band is focused and intense. We are going to get some very heavy rain out of this. I am picking up 1 to 2 inches per hour out of this rain band right now. So there's going to be possibly some flash flooding developing in this parts north of Fort Lauderdale, south of Palm Beach. We'll continue to watch it. Updates throughout the morning.
Live from the station taking action for you, this is ABC Action News.
All right, that was the latest update there from Greg. Officials in Polk County, they're prepping the best they can to keep residents safe during and after the storm.
I'm Dee O'Reilly along with James Tully here. Crews are getting ready. Our Andrea Lyon just got to their headquarters. She joins us now with the latest. Good morning, Andrea.
Good morning. We're here at the Polk County EOC Center. We have a few staff members behind me working to monitor the storm as Hurricane Irma approaches. We're told that later today, as the storm approaches, this will become a full activation. You'll see a lot more staff members behind me scurrying to, help folks answer phone calls and continue to monitor this storm. Just a short time ago, like you said, we were on our way into the EOC. The roads were pretty clear, nobody on the roads. It has started to rain. There's a small amount of wind that is starting to whip up. It's not too bad at this point. As for gas, we weren't able to find any gas on the way in here, but according to the Gas Buddy app, we have found at least one gas station. There may be others, a Marathon gas station on Lake Ship Drive that does have gas at this point. Now, if you haven't decided to go to emergency shelter yet, now would be the time to do that. There is a mandatory evacuation for mobile homes in low-lying areas in the Polk County area. I'm told that only 5% of the capacity has been taken up at the emergency shelters in Polk County, with room for at least 38,000 people. That leaves a lot of room for those who are still wavering to decide whether or not to take shelter in an emergency shelter in Polk County. Right now, we're told that 2 shelters are filled. That's Spook Hill Elementary in Lake Wales and McKeel Academy for Special Needs in Lakeland. We're told that if you need a special needs facility, to head to the Bartow School. That leaves at least 19 other shelters open in Polk at this time. They will be closing their doors, though, later this afternoon as Hurricane Irma approaches. But before you head there, if you decide to, make sure to bring your ID, hygiene products, food, water as you ride out the storm. In Polk County, Andrea Lyon, ABC Action News.
All right, let's take a look at this. And we showed you this about an hour ago, and since then, this is out of Miami, where a boat is just whipping around a dock, taking on more and more water. This video, again, we showed you about an hour ago. I believe we've updated it. You can see the conditions. They're starting to worsen.
Yeah, they're going to get worse because that storm, of course, is moving closer to the Miami area, closer to making landfall, actually. I want to check in now with Greg D. He just got the update, the 5 a.m. update, which is the one that we've been waiting for.
Yeah, literally. So I'm going to be looking at this live with you. As soon as I was walking to the green screen, Jason Adams said, yeah, it's in. Okay, so here are a couple of things. Intensity remains the same. Pressures as it was at the 4 a.m. update. It's now moving a little faster, northwest at 8. And this is something that we expect as the storm continues to move north. A couple things I want to point out on satellite. Notice the west side of it not spreading out as well as the east side. I looked at the water vapor imagery. There's some dry air heading in at the mid-levels over the Gulf of Mexico that may be starting to reach the storm. Dry air is good for us because it's going to try to eat into Irma. And anytime some of this dry air gets caught up in the circulation, the storm is going to halt its intensification It may even be knocked down a little bit. So we're hoping for dry air. There's a front that passed through the northern Gulf, the same front that's picking this thing up. And as it heads north, let's hope for some of this dry air to get into the storm. All right, the track. So this is now the latest track from the Hurricane Center. And maybe, Jason, what do you think? A little westward shift with that?
Maybe 10 miles.
Maybe 10 miles at the most. We're going to get a closer look at it here in another graphic coming up. Still, we're looking at a major Category 3 hurricane just off of our coast or along our coast. Here's the timing. Sunday night into Monday, 115 mile an hour. That's a Category 3 hurricane just offshore tomorrow night into Monday. Hurricane warnings up for the entire area, including Lake Okeechobee, where we expect hurricane conditions. Of course, storm surge warnings also continue. Surge will be an issue. It will be higher Fort Myers South than in our area because of a shorter duration of onshore flow. And for Clearwater and St. Pete, that onshore flow is also going to be strongest during your high tide periods. That's Monday, 3:11 in the morning for Clearwater, 5:24 in the morning in St. Pete. Sarasota, your high tide is at 4:09 Monday morning, but I think the strongest onshore winds will be north of you by then. Looks like a good forecast planning ahead through maybe the next couple of hours in Tampa is just light rain, but then the rain chances just 100%, and it's going to be windy, temperatures in the 70s all day. In fact, at the beaches, take a look at the winds on our beach forecast. By 8 o'clock, sustained northeast at 73. That update, Jason's going to send out the new track. It's all at Greg D. Weather on Twitter, Instagram, my Facebook pages as well as we track it for you. So here's the latest info. 130, 928 pressure. It is intensified into a Category 4 hurricane. The track basically where it was at 5, maybe just slightly to the west. Now, any slight changes to the west of that track are going to put a big portion of our area in the eastern side of the storm. This is that stronger part of the storm, and that's where we'll have to worry for maybe some very strong winds. That's where the strongest winds are in this storm. Yeah, take a look at where the center is located. It is just south and west, or south and east of Key West by about 30 to 40 miles. In fact, about 100 miles from Miami, and they're already getting hurricane-force winds in that area. I'm going to show you the track here, skip ahead in my graphics right up to it so you can see the newest information. We'll see if we can get really close. So there you see it. I mean, the new information from the Hurricane Center, basically, there's probably very little change in that. Maybe a slight shift towards the west, that gray area or cone. It's out of almost Polk County now and out of Highlands County. So it has shifted a little to the west. This kind of track, though, if the eye were to track directly along the coast, would expose our largest population to the strongest part of the storm, because remember, it's east and north of the center where you're going to see the strongest winds. This is where that eastern eye wall would be. So you're talking about that part of the storm heading right up 75. So if the storm were to track inland, Tampa, St. Pete, and Sarasota would be on the weaker side of the storm. If it takes this track, you're now putting the heavier populated areas of Hillsborough, Pinellas, Pasco, Hernando County, Manatee, and Sarasota County in some of the strongest parts of the storm. So this right now is still indicating we're going to get major hurricane conditions. This is where your wind gusts could exceed 115 miles an hour. This is where you're going to see some lightning and thunder as this thing moves in as we track it Sunday night into Monday. Now, this is just as of the last update. Again, this could continue to be adjusted as we kind of watch where this eye wobbles south of the Keys and then eventually south of Naples. But on this track, this is going to mean Sunday night into Monday, folks, it's going to get pretty intense here in portions of Hillsborough down, especially towards Manatee and Sarasota County, as that is the strongest part of the storm. And of course, east, even outside of this cone, remember, it will continue to rain heavily, and there will be isolated tornadoes and flash flooding. Hardy, DeSoto, Highlands County. This cone doesn't stop, outside of this cone doesn't mean you're not getting any effects. You're going to get tropical storm force winds here, maybe even hurricane wind gusts in Polk County, and then those flooding rains all across the region. So this is something we're going to have to watch very carefully. So that's the 5 a.m. update from the Hurricane Center. An updated track right now has it tracking basically Sarasota, right over to Bradenton, right over St. Pete Beach, then heading north and offshore again. As we zoom out, this would mean that Irma would make 2 landfalls in Florida. The second landfall somewhere south of Tallahassee in Monticello. So that's going to be in the Florida Big Bend. So we could be looking at 2 Florida landfalls within the next 24 hours or so as Irma continues towards the north and northwest. I'm going to reload some of my graphics here and take you back to the radar and talk about the storm and show you what's going on right now in our region as we get close on Irma. There is the center of circulation. There is that eye. Key West right now, they're gusting to hurricane force. We've already seen wind gusts to about 84 miles an hour. That's only going to grow. This is the part of the storm that is most concerning, that northern and eastern section of the eye wall. And if the storm tracks just to the west of us, we're going to be exposed to that part of the storm in part of the region. Everyone else east of 75 is going to be exposed to this. The east and northern sections of the storm, the northeast quadrant, this is where the heaviest rain is. This is also where your isolated tornadoes are and your stronger wind gusts. The northeast quadrant is also where the tropical storm force and hurricane winds extend out the farthest. So the storm reaches out in its wind field, usually the hardest on the east side, the farthest. So this is going to put much of our area on the stronger part of the storm if that were to be the case, that Irma stays on that track. Tornado watch continues. No change to that watch. This is going to be updated from the Storm Prediction Center, not the Hurricane Center, and they're just going to continue to expand that north and west, guaranteed through the day. At some point today, every county in the Florida Peninsula is going to be under a tornado watch by tonight as Irma continues north and northwest. Take a live look outside. We've got live images from West Palm right now before we talk about it. So Irma, about 130 miles southwest of West Palm right now. Look at that surf starting to pick up. The palm trees definitely feeling the wind. We showed you pictures earlier in the morning of already some street flooding in Miami. And that's still just tropical storm winds. We're not even talking about a hurricane. The hurricane force winds, they're probably a good 80, 90 miles south and west of Miami as Irma continues northwest. So your strongest winds are going to be here in this eye wall, the reds. That's where you're going to see wind gusts exceeding 140 miles an hour in an eye that's just 25 miles across. It's a very small eye. The heavier rain bands now moving in. This is now going to be a steady rain from basically Miami downtown south. This is the rain shield around Irma, consistent, heavy, steady rain. Whereas north towards Fort Lauderdale and West Palm, these rain bands kind of come and go in these crazy waves of torrential tropical rain. These dark reds and oranges, the radar is reading 2 inches of rain per hour. It may be misreading them. The rain is so dense in these things. You could be seeing rainfall approaching 3 inches per hour in some of these rain bands. So brief flash flooding, street flooding happening possibly right now in portions of Broward and Palm Beach County. That's why folks are staying inside. They're kind of waiting this thing out. We've got special marine warnings out for storms offshore. It's these cells that the Weather Service is going to be watching as they head toward Fort Lauderdale to see if maybe they'll produce another spin up or two. We've had tornado warnings here earlier. Right now, looking at the wind data out of the storm, see little pops of bright green out here. These are the ones that we're going to watch. They're going to come in onshore, probably between Boynton Beach down toward Fort Lauderdale. This 95 corridor there, northern Broward County, maybe southern Palm Beach County. We'll be watching for those. Over towards to the north towards Vero and Fort Pierce, we've already got a flash flood warning until 5:15 this morning, as they're seeing some heavy rain there. Had a tornado warning here earlier. I want to show you the radar. This is what things look like at about 3:50 this morning. Notice bright green, bright red, right next to each other. This showed up for about 2 radar scans. It was very brief, but there could be a possible tornado there. We'll see if we get in your damage reports. Lightning there also indicating that heavier cell. So this was to the west of Lakewood Park, probably close to, if not just west of 95. Little less heavily populated here, Indian River, St. Lucie County, to the west of 95 on the east coast. So hopefully that was just out there in the middle of the woods. From Deltona down towards Orlando, it is now a steady light rain with this onshore flow. Outer rain bands from this thing moving onshore. We've seen some showers now to the west of 75, but folks in Citrus, over towards Hernando and Pasco County. Steady rain is moving in. Now, if you must go somewhere early this morning through about 10 o'clock, you can. There will be rain out there, though, and there will be some slightly gustier winds, I think, through 10 a.m. If you absolutely have to get somewhere close, you may have that opportunity, but as we head towards midday, just conditions are going to deteriorate, and these heavier rains down to the east, they're going to start moving in. Look at the rain right now in Polk County. Frostproof over towards Winter Haven. It's coming down hard, folks. Heavier cells now Sebring and Avon Park, Northern Highlands County. This is all pointed into Hardy County as well, or Hardy County and down towards DeSoto. Eventually, these are going to make their way towards the West Coast, too, where right now, around Tampa, we're just seeing some lighter scattered rain. So 75 south, right through Hillsborough County, right from the apex there, the 275-75 split, all the way down 75 towards 275 on the south side, the toll booths for the Sunshine Skyway. Just a light, steady rain, gusty winds. You know, the Skyway, of course, closed. Let's go back to Fort Lauderdale. Live look outside. We've got a look for you. Wow, look at those palm trees. And remember, these are just tropical storm conditions. They may never experience actual sustained hurricane winds in Fort Lauderdale. That's actually not likely. That's going to be more towards the West Coast. But the wind's already whipping the trees around. The heavy rain is falling. This is one of the heavier rain bands associated with Irma right now. It's a concentrated cell that is producing rainfall rates of 2 to 3 inches per hour right now in northern and central Broward County, especially down at the coast. So we'll watch that area for you on radar throughout the morning. Wind gusts, these update every few minutes as we get them. Look at Miami. They just gusted at the airport. Now, the airport, remember, if you've ever flown in and out of Miami, it's inland. We're getting a wind gust to almost 60 miles an hour. They're likely a little higher at the coast. Key West gusting to 66. That's just the last report. Their highest has already been 84. I expect that by the end of the day, we're going to get a triple-digit wind gust for sure, if not more than one, out of the Key West Airport or the Naval Air Station. By the way, the Navy has evacuated out of Key West. That's how seriously they're taking the storm. The Naval Air Station has been evacuated. So here's the updated track from the Hurricane Center as of 5 o'clock. Maybe a slight shift towards the west. And these slight shifts really matter because now, remember, this red line was going right through Fort Myers earlier in Northport. Now it's hugging the coast, Venice to Englewood. So there might have been just a slight shift. We're going to watch. This could continue to shift back and forth as these little wobbles from the eye happening. But guys, basically, our forecast hasn't changed. Major hurricane on the way, still expecting those hurricane conditions. The preps that you did, absolutely necessary because we are going to get the strongest part of this one coming up overnight. So after sunset tonight, right into Monday morning. We'll continue to update you. Watch the radar, look at some of the new data from the Hurricane Center, and have that for you in the next few minutes. James?
All right, thanks. We want to remind you again here, if the power goes out, really when the power goes out, hold on, guys. Sorry. Live TV. All right, microphone's back on. I want to remind you, when the power goes out, we really should say when the power goes out. You can't watch us on TV. There are many other ways to do it. You can listen to ABC Action News for updates, and you can do so on our radio partners. They're listed on the screen here. We've got 99.5 WQIK, Q105, Wild 94.1, B98.7, and 92.5 Maxima. They are going to simulcast us, which means everything we're saying on air is going to be available on those radio stations.
And we're not going anywhere. We're going to be here with you every step of the way, all throughout this. As soon as, Irma hits, Irma's out the door, we're here the whole way. Continuous coverage, not only on air, but on Roku, Apple TV, on our Facebook page, also on abcactionnews.com, and on our free mobile app.
Okay, we want to show you this video that's just in. We've got heavy winds and rain hitting South Florida right now, those outer bands of Hurricane Irma. Let's take a look at this video from Davie. You're going to see here in one of these shots, there it is, this tree down. We understand completely uprooted. It's now blocking a street down there.
Also, I want to show you some video out of Miami, a little further south of Davie there, showing the wind and the rain. Look at that right there, really coming down, impacting South Florida as Irma gets closer. They are experiencing, as Greg said, tropical storm force winds in that area. Greg and Jason also talked about the first tornado warning that was issued. That was in Fort Lauderdale, probably the first of many until this storm makes its way away from our state. The eye of this storm, we understand, is about to move over the lower Florida Keys. Of course, Greg and Jason are watching that, and they'll tell you what they're experiencing there as soon as we get a chance to go back to them. Right now, though, some folks are trying to get some rest as much as they possibly can at local shelters, which many we're hearing are already filled to capacity.
ABC Action News reporter Ashley Yore is outside Carrollwood Elementary School as the waiting for Irma there continues.
It's very dark. No one really around right now outside Carrollwood Elementary School. Imagine everyone's sleeping because take a look at the parking lot here. You can see there are lots of cars. This parking lot seems to be about full. The one around the corner seems to be pretty full as well. We know that this shelter is handicap accessible, and at last check it was still open. So that's a good thing for folks. We know emergency officials telling everyone in Zone A they need to evacuate, and they are trying to get people to safe places by Sunday morning, 8 a.m. So again, we are at Carrollwood Elementary School this morning. No one really up right now. We imagine that they're sleeping, but this is a good place to go. If you need another shelter, just check out our website, abcactionnews.com. We have a whole list of where you can go. Reporting in Carrollwood, I'm Ashley Yore, ABC Action News.
Yeah, good idea to get as much sleep as you possibly can right now. We do want to check back in with Greg D. We're about 17 minutes out from that update at 5 o'clock, that all-important update at 5 o'clock. Greg joins us now with more on that.
Yeah, just had that in. Had a quick second here or two to just look at some of the latest data, and just the slightest shift for sure with that track to the west. Don't read too much into it, but there has been just an ever so slight movement to the west. The turn maybe is taking a little bit longer. It's kind of taking the turn wide, as maybe you would say if you were in your car, as it heads up towards the north and northwest. But for us, of course, that does make a difference because we're so close to that track. Still a Category 4 storm, basically up the west Florida coast. Could make a landfall somewhere on the west coast, especially between Fort Myers and Sarasota and Bradenton, and then go back over the Gulf as the land kind of pulls away from the track of the storm, and then make another landfall in the Florida Big Bend, as likely probably by then a Category 2 hurricane, depending on how much it spends on land. If it takes the western side of this cone, well, you're going to keep Irma over water. It's probably going to stay a Cat 3 all the way up towards Apalachicola. If it goes inland early, then we may be dealing with a Cat 1, maybe even a strong tropical storm by the time it reaches the Georgia border. It really all depends on that track. And the margin of error between the two white lines, notice, is just basically collapsing. Every one of these updates, as we shift everything up, the margin of error is shrinking, and we continue to focus on this Florida west coast. Florida here not helping us in that the landmass itself kind of sticks out into the Gulf of Mexico, where Tampa and St. Pete are, Pinellas County. The farther westward extent there on the peninsula here in central Florida, kind of reaching out towards the storm. So yesterday that track was kind of Fort Myers heading back up through portions of Polk County, back up into Hernando County. Now we're kind of looking at you, Sarasota County, possibly maybe extreme western Collier County, heading right up the coast, Englewood, Venice, Sarasota, and then back up towards Bradenton, Anna Maria, the islands. Either way, no matter where the track goes at this point, either between those white lines, you're going to get battered pretty hard. We've had some dry air try to kind of come into the storm on the west side. That may be eating away at some of the outflow out there on the west side. We'll see if that affects intensity. For now, we've got a Category 4 storm with hurricane conditions now developing in the central and southern Keys. So Key West, from Marathon to Key West, these are the worst conditions with Irma in the United States right now. The hurricane force winds right around the center, that outer portion, kind of right about here. We're going to have to shift everything north here. The tropical storm force winds extend a little above this yellow line now, back into just about Fort Lauderdale. So now all of Miami-Dade should be seeing at least sustained minimal tropical storm winds, and then Broward County is next, just to the north. Tornado watches are up for all the red counties through today. This officially is up until noon. They're just going to replace this with another one as the storm continues north. And it looks like we've got another tornado warning up there to the north. We'll get to that in a second. So it's less than 40 miles from Key West, about 115 miles from downtown Miami. Here is that outer eye wall. Remember, we tell you the north side and east side of the storm. This is where your Category 4 wind gusts are, and that's what we'll be watching for as it heads up the Florida coast. 25-mile-an-hour wide eye, your strongest gusts are going to be in the red here. Once you get outside of this 10-mile red area, you still get hurricane force gusts, but they're probably below 100 miles an hour, and that does make a big difference. There's a huge difference between getting a wind gust to 95 versus 130, 140 when it comes to property damage. Steady, heavy rain now. The main rain shield is in Miami. It's going to rain there for a majority of the morning, if not a majority of the day, nonstop now, all across the Alligator Alley. Up north toward Fort Lauderdale, it's this heavy rain band that we're watching all morning. This is going to shift up 95 towards West Palm into Palm Beach County, eventually making its way up through Jupiter and then up the East Coast following Irma. No warnings out of this right now. A special marine warning over the open Atlantic waters. Up to the north, though, we had a flash flood warning, Lakewood Park. Let me get back to the radar here. We're going to readjust and take a look at the new tornado warning on the East Coast, which is just north of the location that we looked at earlier. So I'm going to cancel out this warning there. So this is going to be just south of Melbourne, over toward Floridiana Beach until 5:45 is the tornado warning. We'll take a look at some of the wind data with the storm and see if we can find that possible tornado onshore, if it's moving onshore. Yeah, so that's going to be just offshore. So what the Weather Service here is watching is this little bright green area, probably right there. May have already lost it. That's going to move onshore, and there may be a water spout, maybe a tornado moving in. This is going to be one of many that we'll be tracking throughout the morning, eventually in our area later on into the afternoon. All right, another update coming up in just a few minutes, Dia.
All right, thank you, Greg. Make sure you download our Storm Shield app if you haven't already. Many Manatee County shelters are full this morning. Thousands of people. The good news is they listened to the warnings. They decided to head to shelters to ride out this storm. ABC Action News reporter Ryan Smith is at Bayshore Elementary after speaking with some evacuees just moments ago. Ryan?
Yeah, and that's exactly right. Emergency management officials, of course, very happy with the results so far because so many people have heard their warnings and came to shelters just like this one behind me at Bayshore Elementary School. This is one of 5 shelters across Manatee County that is considered at capacity this morning. But here's the thing. The county opened 23 area schools total in Manatee to people seeking a safe place to ride out this storm. So at this hour, there is still plenty of space. If you're waking up this morning and thinking, yeah, maybe it's time that I get to a safer place and come to one of these shelters, there's still plenty of time and plenty of space. Condition-wise here in Bradenton this morning, we've really seen just some light wind and rain in the overnight hours. But a lot of the folks here, the parents I've been speaking with, well, they came here specifically because they know conditions are only going to get worse throughout this morning and later today.
We live in Bayshore Gardens, and the water is right there. And we're really worried about the storm surge, especially with the way it's moving westerly. And they're saying on the news that it could push water all the way in our house, and we were worried about the flooding.
So far at last check, number-wise, 17,000 people here in Manatee County have sought shelter at area schools, and I'm told by officials that they can hold up to 25,000 people. So like I've been saying all morning, still plenty of space available. Now, they did direct me to 2 schools specifically that has a pretty low capacity compared to other schools. That is Williams Elementary and Witt Elementary School in East Manatee County. That's the latest live this morning in Bradenton. Ryan Smith, ABC Action News.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Of course, we'll check back in with Ryan a little bit later on. We're going to hit our crews in all over the Bay Area, check in with them on a consistent basis.
You can expect that. That's what we're going to be doing throughout the morning. We've got crews spread out all over our viewing area, and we'll check in with them as this progresses. All right, in the meantime, we've got Lindsay Logue standing by. She, of course, is watching the road conditions. Lindsay, you sent out a tweet about an hour ago saying that you're seeing reports of trees down, traffic lights out, water on the roadways, and the Keys up to Miami. It's just a sign.
Most importantly, though, the Sunshine Skyway Bridge is closed.
And that's closed, too. It's just a sign of things to come.
Oh, absolutely. And so here's a live look here at the top of the Sunshine Skyway. Trooper riding over it right now. Incredibly dangerous. And that is why the troopers are driving over the bridge to make sure that it still needs to be closed. That's how they test it. That plus sustained winds at 40 miles an hour. There is a chance, I suppose, that they could decide to reopen it. But this is about the fourth or fifth time now that I've seen them driving over it. Do not count on the bridge to reopen. It is very important to understand that if you're coming on up to the north from Manatee or Sarasota counties, or for whatever reason you're in Pinellas and you need to head south, consider that you may have to actually get onto I-75, which is definitely going to add time and stress to your morning commute. Okay, so right now the Sunshine Skyway is closed. I'm also watching hundreds of other traffic cameras throughout the Bay Area. A live look here at I-4. This is going to be near Kingsway Road. Couple of cars out there this morning, as well as on I-275 and on I-75. No crashes, no breakdowns, but troopers did just put out a tweet, and they are warning drivers, listen, if you don't have to be out, don't be out on the roads. The last thing you would need right now is a breakdown that's unexpected, a crash that's unexpected. You're stuck, and now a trooper has to be out there too.
Yeah, and at some point, though, when the winds get a little bit, what they said, above 45 miles an hour, they're not coming out. So if you call 911, you're basically on your own because they're not going to risk the crews to bring them out to try to rescue you when you've been told not to get on the roads.
And another big thing we're also going to keep our eyes on today is the possible closure of the other bridges. And this could be detrimental. So we're talking about the Bayside Bridge. We're talking about the Gandy, the Courtney Campbell, and the Howard Franklin. Major arteries connecting two major cities, two huge bodies of land. And the last time that they closed for weather conditions was back during Tropical Storm Debbie. I know you remember that. I know a lot of our viewers remember that, where Debbie just sat on top of us and churned in the Gulf. So at that point, that was in 2012, the Skyway was shut down for 3 days. The Howard Franklin was shut down for 8 hours. The Courtney Campbell was also closed. And this then comes into, when I was talking with Florida Highway Patrol troopers this week about the potential closure of these other bridges, it's incredibly dangerous, especially when you consider EMS. To having to cross for whatever reason from one county to another, when those bridges are closed, they simply can't. And for anyone who is in Pinellas County and you're thinking about leaving, I strongly advise you, I'm not trying to be, dramatize this, but this is very serious. If you need to cross a bridge and head on over to Hillsborough County, or you're planning on going to Polk, now is the time to do it while they're still open.
Well, it's fair to say, too, this is all taken into consideration when the mandatory evacuations are put out. Okay, so if you think that you're going to be safe riding it out in a place that was that has you do a mandatory evacuation, just what you brought up. I mean, EMS, safety, all that stuff, they can't get to you.
Well, and unlike the Skyway, which shuts down for a wind reason, the other bridges, they don't have that wind threshold. But they will shut down when the bay water starts to come up over and impede the roadway. That happens in just a strong storm, let alone a Cat 3 hurricane.
And we've also been telling people, too, if you decide that you want to leave your home and seek shelter, the closest shelter may be just around the corner. You may not even have to, cross into counties, or it may be just around the corner. So make sure you check and find out where the safest place is that's closest to you.
Yeah, you said it yesterday. I mean, it's not leaving the state when you're evacuated. It could just be a couple miles down the road.
And I know it's a tough decision. It's not comfortable. It's not ideal to stay in a shelter, but sometimes
Congress passed the Pets Act back in 2006. States accepting disaster and money must have a plan for evacuations of pets. However, motels and hotels are not required to accept them. The website also addresses fuel rumors and FEMA blocking sales. The agency says that's not true, but they add whenever there is a storm, the demand for gas spikes by as much as 5 times as normal. Florida is working right now to replenish fuel stocks as soon as Irma passes. And now let's go to cleanup and dispelling a rumor. Cleaning up and making temporary repairs to your storm damaged property will not disqualify you from federal disaster assistance. You do need, though, to document the damage with pictures or video, and please save those receipts. Also, FEMA warns you not to become a victim of ID theft.
Okay, we do apologize. I think we've lost Serena's microphone. We've been on nonstop. These batteries are going dead. So we'll try to get back in touch with Serena and get some more information for you as soon as we get that battery replaced. Right now, though, we do want to show you what conditions are looking like for our friends further south as this storm gets closer. Do we have that video, that picture from Fort Myers?
Some live conditions here.
Not yet.
Stand by.
I think we're going to get it very shortly. There it is right there. There's the image. This is actually in South Florida. This is South Beach. Look at the conditions there, deteriorating very, very quickly. This storm is approaching the lower Florida Keys. Miami beginning to feel it right now. The winds are whipping. That rain is coming down. We know already 300,000 people across our state are without power. That number is expected to rise. Nearly 1 million people are expected to be out of power at some point in our state as this storm makes its way up the coast. It could be a week, could be a few days. You just know that we're probably going to have them. I mean, it's inevitable with these winds.
This is Miami. The track is lining up with our west coast. It shows the sheer strength of the storm, also the sheer size of it.
And they're getting tropical storm force winds there, not hurricane force winds.
No, this is tropical storm force.
And those limbs there just whipping around.
It's truly, as the governor said yesterday, an unprecedented weather event.
Okay, we are continuing our team coverage right now. We've also got a crew set up in Sarasota checking conditions there.
And let's go to ABC Action News reporter Wendy Lane, who I believe is just set up there. Wendy, what can you tell us? Describe what's going on around you.
Just like those winds that you guys were talking about, those are starting to pick up right here in downtown Sarasota. We're on Main Street, guys. I don't know if you can just check them out. You could probably hear that wind. It's that gust that I've been talking about all morning long. So we'll have a little bit of wind, and then these gusts just whip through, and they're violent. And that storm's not even here. Luckily, a lot of businesses down here have set up for this. They have all kinds of boarding and metal up in front of their windows. So it's just kind of a strange scene here because, you know, normally this place is a really hopping area and it's definitely a ghost town down here. Then some businesses decided not to do anything, but there are limbs everywhere from palms down here. And this is just the beginning of this storm. So as we've been saying earlier, there is a steady rain that has been throughout the Sarasota area basically all morning long. It's just this kind of steady drizzle that's been coming down, and then those winds. So we did check into shelters in the area. So 12,400 people have checked into shelters in the area. There's still about 5 shelters open. I know 5 of them have closed. And if you're deciding whether it's time for you to go to a shelter or not, don't wait any longer because these winds are coming. You know, if they can do this kind of damage in just, you know, the very slight, even, you know, outskirts of this catastrophic storm that we're about to get, just imagine. So we want everyone to stay safe out there. Again, check out our website, abcactionnews.com, to get a full list of the shelters that are open in any area that you are in Sarasota. Wendy Lane, ABC Action News.
All right, thank you, Linda. Wendy, you can see the wind just kind of blowing around there. Other than that, it's just calm.
Yeah.
So I want to check in now with Greg D. He's got an update on Irma. If you're just waking up with us, he got that update about 25 minutes ago, the newest update, the one that we really wait for in the morning.
Yeah, had some time to play with the graphics. I'm going to show you a real close-up view of that new projected track, 30-mile Category 4 hurricane. A couple of things I want to point out. This is a water vapor image. It basically measures moisture in the air. Tropical systems love moist air. This is what they do. They pick up moisture and move it northward. So lots of moisture in the oranges here indicated around Irma. Watch the northern Gulf. You see how these whiter shades are being pushed down by these darker blue shades? This is some drier air coming in just above the surface, and it's going to get sucked into the western portions of Irma. We're going to have to watch, is it enough to have an effect on the storm? That would be good news because it could maybe prevent it from at least strengthening anymore. I mean, I'll take that at this point. Just maintaining this intensity is certainly better than getting any stronger. We can hope for a little bit of weakening, but as warm as these waters are off the southwest Florida coast, I don't think so. Here's the updated track from the Hurricane Center. Now let's go in. I've taken away all the icons so you can see their track, and that is a definite slight shift towards the west coast. Basically, the forecast for us with this ship, it doesn't change much. We're going to see hurricane conditions. We're going to be on the stronger side of the storms. Wind gusts of above 100 miles an hour certainly possible, all the way from Fort Myers back up into Pasco and Hernando County, especially to the west of 75. That's where we're going to see some of the stronger winds right along the coast. As you get east of 75, still depending on the actual track, things should improve quickly in terms of wind, at least out of some of those strongest winds. The eye may be reforming a new, smaller eye, a stronger, more tighter eye wall. We'll watch this, see how this fills in. There's Key West. I just checked the reports out of the Keys. The upper, middle, and lower Keys are all reporting wind gusts now to hurricane force. 74 miles in the upper Keys, 80-mile-an-hour wind gust in the central Keys, and 84-mile-an-hour stronger gust over toward Key West. There's the eye wall right there. It's going to come really close to Key West, may slip between Key West and Marathon. The hurricane winds are right along this inner ring of heavy rain and possibly some lightning and thunder in that too. The tropical storm force winds, they're way out ahead of the storm. You get windy. We've been showing you the video out of Miami and Fort Lauderdale. The wind's already up, and they're nowhere near the center of circulation. It's more than 100 miles away. And, of course, those spin-up tornadoes continue. I'll update you on that latest warning off the East Coast as well. I think we're 30 miles now or so from Key West. As of the 5 o'clock update, the other big change, instead of moving at 6 miles an hour, it's now moving at 8. Okay, that's only 2 miles an hour more, but you know, that's 30% faster than it was at the last update. It is speeding up, and I expect that to continue as well with probably faster than 10 miles an hour motion as it gets north of the Keys. About a 25 mile an hour, 25 mile wide eye with the strongest winds in that eye wall, that red there that you see on the radar. Steady, heavy rain from the Everglades, Homestead, Miami, now moving into Fort Lauderdale. This nasty rain band that was moving into Broward County has now completely shifted basically into Palm Beach County. So West Palm, Jupiter, this is going to be isolated flash flooding in this band as the rain is coming down at 2 to 3 inches per hour in spots. There's a closer look at it. There's Fort Lauderdale, Pembroke Pines down towards North Miami. The heaviest rain now out towards Boca, and that's going to shift north along the Florida East Coast. Farther north, tornado warning. This is Brevard County, not Broward, Brevard County. That's the Mico community there right along A1A on the East Coast, south of Melbourne. Tornado warning until 5:45, so another 6 minutes. It was this area out here that they were watching. I don't see as an intense of a tornado signature in the wind data now, but there may be a water spout, maybe a brief tornado as that moves in. We did see one spin up earlier to the west of 95 there. For our area, the rain is just moving in. So now we're finally getting steady rain in Polk City. I don't think this is going to stop now, Polk County. Once you get into this onshore flow, you're basically going to see some type of rain in Polk County for the duration of the storm. So now we're going to start adding up those rainfall totals. It's almost 6 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. It will rain in Polk County possibly for the next 24 hours. Just think about that. Steady rain now falling for the next 24 hours. This is where we're going to get 8, 12, 15-inch rainfall totals because it will just keep going. And then you get to the west, to the east of there, and you're talking about these heavy rain bands even producing isolated heavier amounts. Highlands County, Tampa, light rain now. This is all starting to fill in, and eventually that's going to lead to higher winds as well. Current wind gusts down to the south, 50, 60 miles an hour gusting to hurricane force. These winds spreading north. We're going to take you through the wind forecast and hour-by-hour breakdown
everywhere
of the
that Irma is going to be. Let's get to Bill
All
Weir.
right, thank
You've
you,
been
Greg.
there from the beginning.
Again,
the stiff and stubborn culture, the rugged individualists who wanted to wait it out, and of course, the concern will be making it through and then making a life thereafter. That's as big a part of the reality as right now.
Absolutely. In fact, people down here who grew up with hurricanes, I think I was reading last night that a hurricane hits the Florida Keys on average every 4 years, going back through recorded history. This is a culture that's forged by the forces of the wind and the sky and the sea, and they know that, this is just the appetizer. They're going to be dealing with the entree and dessert for weeks to come. They say, you hide from wind and you run from water. I guess those two things should just go together, I suppose. Stay away from the coast, stay out of the wind. But in my reporterly duty, I'm going to venture out just to give you a sense of how the gusts are happening. We're starting to see trees come down. We're starting to see boats move around here. Here's the one of the national or state symbols of Florida, the no golf cart parking sign. I mean, this is the sort of thing that was standing last night when we left, and it was at some point in the night became a missile. But this is the immediate danger as the wind is blowing stuff around is getting clocked by a piece of tree or pole or debris, and then comes the water. We're hearing reports down in Key West that the water levels are some 2 feet above level down there. I was here for Wilma back in 2005 when 75% of Key West was inundated, and it came in 2 waves. They thought the worst had passed in the morning, and then there was a midnight wave that came back and surprised everybody. As you know, Chris, you have to micro-adjust. That's what makes this such a dramatic story, is every minute something new develops. The storm path tracks a certain way. But as far as the Keys goes, we know that there are a handful of people riding it out just on the other side of Key Largo because they, as you said, they wanted to be close to their boats and start their recovery. That goes against all conventional wisdom and all admonitions from those in authority. But we're, thoughts and prayers for those folks as well. We know down in Key West there's 10, 20, maybe 30,000 people in shelters there. People who would just refuse to stay. It's just in their DNA, or refuse to leave. It's in their DNA, and not to retreat. But we're all watching it as Irma comes ashore here. Oh, those things are really starting to howl now. Oh, this.
As you've been telling us all along. You've been telling us and storytelling for us brilliantly about the rugged individualism that predominates, that, really special culture down there. But you can go either way on whether or not it's something to respect in time like this. Now that you're getting a feel for what's coming that way with these outer bands of Irma, and you know what the situation is on the Key, what is your biggest concern about what Irma is going to impact?
I think the biggest concern in this part of the world is a bridge going down and cutting them off from the mainland. It is their lifeline. It's interesting, there was a guy named Flagler who built Florida, a big oil tycoon. He was the guy who says we should drain the swamp, the Everglades, that this is going to be, we can turn this place into paradise. And they say that Social Security and bug spray and air conditioning changed Florida, but it was really big infrastructure projects, dams and dikes and bridges, like the original overseas railroad, which they built through the Great Depression through 3 hurricanes. They finally completed this thing, but in 1935 it was taken out by the Great Labor Day hurricane, and it just shows that if a bridge goes down, it may not come back. That's what they worry about, Chris.
And 2 things to remember. 1, you're right, and all that infrastructure is now getting old, and a lot of it hasn't been updated. That's going to be part of this story. And the second one is one of the immutable laws of storms. Water always wins. Bill, stay safe. Bill, we'll check back with you in a little bit. Let's take a break right now. When we come back, this storm is all about change. Hurricane Irma keeps shifting. She's done it again. We have the latest storm track, new information, right after this break. Stay safe. Stay with CNN.
He's one of the kings of couture with a signature monochrome suit. Karl Lagerfeld is a fashion designer, publisher and photographer. Synonymous with Chanel, where he's been chief designer since 1983. He also works for Fendi and has his own fashion line. His wealthy family made their fortune importing condensed milk into Germany. He moved to Paris as a teenager to study fashion, landing his first job at Balmain. And now he's surrounded by the glitterati of models and celebrities. But one of his closest friends is feline.
I never thought that I would fall in love like this with a cat.
With several personal maids, a profitable modelling career, and a huge social media following, Chopette is nearly as famous as her owner. And that's Karl Lagerfeld in 60 seconds.
The Volvo Ocean Race represents the ultimate team challenge in offshore racing. It's known by many as the Everest of the seas.
And with just a few months until it all gets underway in Alicante, Spain, this month on Main Sail we're previewing the fleet as it lines up together for the first time. Preparation for the toughest race around the planet.
Main Sail, Thursday on CNN, in partnership with Rolex.
It's the battle for business class on the next CNN Business Traveller. United reveals Polaris.
We want to astound customers.
With exclusive behind-the-scenes access every step of the way. The design. Awesome. The testing.
You're the first to actually taste the new food.
The hiccups.
The one problem I'm having right now, getting them out.
And the launch. This really is the secret weapon. The making of Polaris on this month's CNN Business Traveller.
In association with Invest Macedonia and Macedonia Tourism. All new Inside Africa. Unlocking the mysteries behind the continent you thought you knew. Shipbuilders work on an eco-alternative to an ancient sailing boat in Kenya.
Our intentional regeneration is really to reinvent the recycling business.
Inside Africa, Tuesday.
The conditions there are beginning to deteriorate, but then look there at Fort Lauderdale as well. Those palm trees just whipping in the wind. We've been watching conditions there deteriorate all morning long. When we checked there about an hour ago, they weren't blowing that much, but now, I mean, it's a complete difference.
And we're going to continue to see the worsening of the conditions, and we're going to give you those live looks as long as they hold up for us. We're going to have them for you on air here.
Yeah, that's the key, as long as they hold up.
That's
a lot of
the
times
key.
they do freeze, but remember, we're in the middle of the storm. We try to keep going back to those shots, but if they freeze, just know that it's because, you know, reception is not that good right now. Okay, we are continuing to check conditions all across the Bay Area.
We are. Reporter Kumazi Aaron joins us now live from the Crown Plaza Hotel, West Shore, where people evacuated. But now they're being told they may have to leave whether or not they did, Kumazi.
Well, guys, we're here at the Crown Plaza West Shore, and they are definitely getting ready for Irma. You can see here, this is usually the doors that lead people out to, you know, hang out, relax at the pool, but none of that is happening today. In fact, they have had these doors taped off, the windows taped up since yesterday, since we've been here, and this sign has been up telling people that this is a mandatory evacuation zone starting Saturday. And the general manager wrote this note under here saying, look, you need to go somewhere else. He highly suggests that guests evacuate, go somewhere north, find a local shelter, but not everyone did, and there are actually, even though this hotel is empty right now, a lot of guests still staying in this hotel. I want to show you some other measures that the hotel has taken just to make sure that the people who have decided to stay here, knowing it's a mandatory evacuation zone, are safe. So these are the floodgates that they have up here, so people have not been able to go back to this area where there are conference rooms and whatnot since about yesterday, maybe even Friday, and then another flood gate up here just blocking people from this area. But still, seeing all of this in this hotel has not deterred some people from staying here. Some people say this is where they had to stay. This is the dining area, and yesterday we were here for dinner. It was full of people, and they were just saying, we're going to ride out the storm here. The crew working here surprisingly says they were going to still be here to feed people, so we're expecting guests to come down here in the morning for breakfast. And then at noon, there's a mandatory meeting for everyone who has decided to stay in this hotel. This is the general manager saying, hey, I want everyone to be on the same page. So at noon, he's going to meet with everyone here, go over the safety plan for the hotel. There is a safe room on the second floor that everyone's going to have the opportunity to go to when this storm does hit. He's going over what's going on with the elevators, where people can find flashlights, things like that, and just really taking that extra effort to make sure that everyone who has decided to stay here, knowing this is a mandatory evacuation zone, is safe. So hopefully in about an hour or so, there should be more people waking up, coming down to get something to eat. So hopefully we'll be able to talk to them about, their decision to decide to ride out the storm here. And any more information we get from the hotel, we'll pass that along to you. Reporting live in West Shore, Kumasi Aaron, ABC Action News.
All right, thank you, Kumasi. So much still to wait for right now. I'm sure those evacuees thought, you know what, it might be better to go to hotel, but we'll find out in about an hour or so if they actually have to leave. Okay, less than an hour now until all access to Clearwater Beach is completely closed off. They're going to shut off that beach at 6 o'clock this morning.
ABC Action News reporter Sarah Hollenbeck is there with the latest on the steps Pinellas County officials are taking to keep everybody safe.
Very strict. That's how Pinellas County Sheriff says he's going to be with these checkpoints. Take a look. Right now you can see that they are restricting access onto the barrier islands, but starting at 6 a.m., no one will be able to get onto these islands, even if you live or work there. That's because they say it's going to get so dangerous that they won't be able to get to you in an emergency. Now, we just came from Clearwater Beach, where it was very eerie, very quiet. No lights on in any of the hotels. A strange thing to see, when usually there's so many tourists in that part of the area. So very strange out here, but it's good to know that people are evacuating. And the Pinellas County Sheriff says that he hopes that more people do it, because at one point it's going to get too dangerous for people to be out there. Reporting in Pinellas County, I'm Sarah Hollenbeck, ABC Action News.
Sarah, talking about that surreal scene, a touristy area in the dark right now. We want to remind you again here, when the power goes out, it's really not an if, it's a when. And you can't get ABC Action News either on your TV or through your app. You can listen to it on your weather radio or your battery-powered radio, I should say. I'm going to run through these real quick. 99.5 WQIK, Q105, Wild 94.1, B98.7. and 92.5 Maxima. They will all simulcast our news when the storm gets closer. By simulcast, that means everything that we're saying on this station will come through those radio stations.
We also want to let you know that we're here with you. We're not going to leave. We're going to be here throughout this storm until it passes. We've got continuing coverage, not just on air, but we do want to remind you we're on Roku, we're on Apple TV, on our Facebook page, on abcactionnews.com, and also on our free mobile app. We're here for you wherever you need us. Well, the Florida Keys, that was the first area in our state evacuated ahead of Irma's arrival. That's because just a single road, US 1, leads in and out of Key West.
Some people there in Monroe County apparently waiting until the very last minute to leave. Let's go to Serena Fazan, who has more on a tragic accident that happened.
Mike, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
We got you back, Serena.
You got me back.
Serena, can you just start over? Can you just start over if you could?
I want to stress too, first responders are working so hard, to help people out on the road. And while they were patrolling, they actually found a driver, and they think that maybe during a lull in the storm, as you can see, he crashed his car into a tree, wrapping his pickup truck around the trunk. It's just so sad. He never even made it to the hospital. Monroe County Sheriff Rick Ramsey led the team to recover the body, writing on his Facebook page he did not want to leave this man's body out there during Irma. So far, it's not clear if this crash was weather related, but we certainly have to be careful out there with this weather. State troopers will investigate as soon as it is safe to do so. And once again, guys, so sorry about these mic issues. As you guys mentioned, as Dia, you mentioned, we're live on the air, you know, constantly, and things like this can happen, but we thank people for bearing with us.
Absolutely. All right, thanks, Serena. So sad for that man's family. Right now, folks, we know that you're nervous. We know that you're scared, but a lot of people are trying to get some rest. We're all learning at this point how much we can do on so little sleep because, you know, a lot of us aren't getting a whole lot of sleep right now. People are in shelters, and many of those are filled to capacity.
Yeah, get the sleep tonight, as our chief meteorologist Dennis Phillips said, because tomorrow night, I should say this evening, sleep might be really hard to get.
Get the sleep now.
Sleep, sleep might be hard to come by tonight when the storm is coming through. We have ABC Action News reporter Ashley Orr at the Carrollwood Elementary School. People are just starting to wake up in that shelter. Ashley has some new information about shelters getting close to capacity and how deputies plan to handle that.
There's a slight drizzle out here at Carrollwood Elementary where a lot of people are here seeking shelter. About 420 people here right now. You can see in this hallway a few people starting to wake up this morning. A very scary situation, having to evacuate for anyone. Right now I'm with John and Kelly, and just tell me, how are you guys feeling? Where'd you have to evacuate from?
We had to evacuate from about 5 miles from here. I'm glad that it's my first hurricane. I'm glad that the school let us come and stay. They're doing everything they can to make it, you know, as comfortable as possible.
Kelly, how is it in there? I know it's tough right now.
Oh my gosh, I don't even want to be in there right now. I'm glad that they've let us stay here, but it is crammed. There's a lot of people in there, but I'm glad to be safe here.
What's the mood like right now? I know a lot of us are feeling really nervous. You're obviously with a lot of people who had to leave their homes behind.
Everyone seems a little uneasy in there, you know? No one really seems to know what to do, what's going to happen next. Everyone keeps asking what's going on with Irma, you know? Everyone's unsure of what's going to happen.
This place is at capacity. The Emergency Operations Center telling sheriff's deputies that they don't want to turn anyone away. Ultimately, it is up to school administrators if people do show up early this morning, what they're going to do. But they don't want to turn anyone away because of the nature of this storm, just how powerful Irma is. In Carrollwood, I'm Ashley Orr, ABC Action News.
You know, after working 12 on, 12 off, you start to get a little loopy. Every now and then, Greg has been my rock. This guy too, but Greg has been my rock. I called him yesterday from home because I was like, you know, freaking out trying to get my husband
this
and my
close to falling asleep. Ring, ring, ring. What?
I'm like, Greg,
there's a hurricane coming.
Help me here. He had to. I see. I'm not going to say that he had to calm my husband down. He had to calm me down. Go ahead.
Well, it turns out,
I want to hear this story.
Husband David you were trying to push him to go to the Florida Panhandle, and getting to the real part of the conversation. This is the reason why I was being called. David wasn't trying to evacuate for the storm. He was trying to evacuate from little Hurricane Ryan and Riley,
your daughters,
so that Grandma could just take care of them.
Yes.
Because here comes Irma, and he could not take another woman in his life.
Isn't that the truth? Isn't it? He's like, okay, so Mommy is at work. Mommy is not sure when she's going to come home.
And
I
Daddy
am here
is
with
stuck
these two little hurricanes.
Two little hurricanes and Irma.
Yes.
And
he told Greg, he was like, look, you don't understand. I need to get to Grandma.
And listen, you know, we're all dealing with this in different ways. I live on the east coast of Tampa, on the east side of Tampa. I just closed on a house this week, folks, and that house is surrounded by oaks. And wouldn't you know it, my next door neighbor, and this is what hurricanes do, is a Florida gator. And he spent 2.5 hours helping me put up my storm shutters on my house. I'm a Seminole. He's a Gator. We came together. It was
That's love.
That's love, guys.
That's love.
I mean,
that's what we do.
That kind of touches my heart. It kind of makes me water up a little bit when I think about that.
Hey,
that's
Greg,
what storms do.
Greg, can I say something too while we're at it? We do need some levity this morning, and you putting up the beach planner and then having to say, look, I'm not telling you to go to the beach. I'm just doing this to show you wind conditions.
I'm so busy, I can't make a wind planner, so that's the only graphic that had wind on it. And this is from Roxanne. They were watching this yesterday. She sent this to me. So some of you, I know you're nervous, but others, you're Floridians, you're just going to deal with it. They made Irma-ritas, is what they call them. They turned us on, and they're just sheltering in place, waiting for the storm to go by, and that is absolutely fine unless you're in an evacuation zone. If you don't have to be evacuated, there is no reason to leave the state. There are lots of safe locations. Your home, if it's not in a surge zone, is an absolutely safe place to stay, unless it's a mobile home. At Greg Do Weather, Twitter and Instagram, that's how you send me those pictures. I'd love to show some more. How are you spending the storm? How are you watching? Are your pets with you, your kids? I know some of you have not slept much overnight, and you're not going to sleep much tonight because of the storm's strongest effects will be overnight. If you want to get some sleep and you don't want to sleep at night, go to sleep this morning. Set your alarm for 3, 4 in the afternoon, and then just continue to watch with us. I think you're okay through 3 o'clock. Hurricane force winds expected to move through the area. This is 8:30 this evening. Everyone in the red. Hurricane conditions approaching Tampa at 8:30 overnight. Here's midnight. This is where we're expecting the strongest winds of the storm. You can bet all of us will be here. We're going to be walking you through this minute by minute. We're going to be watching the storm on radar. Guys, let's send it back to you.
All right. Thanks, Greg. Our Simon Chiquette spent the night at the Pinellas Emergency Operations Center to stay on top of how things are going out there. We're hearing there is still shelter space in Pinellas County. We're going to go live to Simon now with details on that from emergency officials. Simon.
Good morning to you guys. A very busy morning here at the Pinellas County Emergency Operations Center. Take a quick look behind me. There's someone from just about every agency involved in planning for this hurricane represented in this room. We're talking about infrastructure, damage assessment, human services, emergency services. And I'm here with Kevin Baxter, who has a lot of expertise about what's going on inside. Talk to me about what's happening behind the scenes right now.
Well, the EOC allows all of our partner groups to get together to coordinate response and help plan for these disaster situations. So helping people to evacuate, which is what we're in the middle of right now. We have the zones A and B are in an evacuation order, and we urge folks to evacuate immediately if they haven't done so yet.
And you mentioned this is staffed 24/7. There's going to be a large number of people in here the entire duration.
Right. And we have partners from municipalities. We have partners from the Florida Department of the Department of Transportation, the Highway Patrol. We have National Guard, all sorts of partners in here working together so that everyone in the same room helps to coordinate responses quickly and effectively.
And you still want folks evacuating. That's really the important part right now, zones A and B still.
Right. Yeah. If you haven't evacuated yet and you're in Zone A or Zone B, then you should do so now.
Okay. What about the bridges coming over here? Can you talk about that real quick?
Sure. Bridges, if you get to that 40-mile-per-hour threshold, bridges such as the Howard Franklin, the Gandy, and the Skyway will close, and the Skyway has already closed. The Highway Patrol will close those bridges due to those wind conditions.
Okay, so time is certainly of the essence, and we know that the worst of it is still to come, so we know you'll be very busy here. Kevin, thanks for taking time to talk with us, and we're expecting more briefings from here this morning and into the afternoon as well. We'll keep you updated live. For now, we'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
Live from the station taking action for you, this is ABC Action News.
Now at 6, good morning Tampa Bay. We are here with you for extended coverage of Hurricane Irma. We're getting you through this storm both before, during, and after. We're here with you. I'm Dee O'Reilly along with James Tully.
That's right, and I think right now we're going to take a look at some live pictures, and we're going to keep going to these throughout the morning. As long as we still have them, we're watching as Hurricane Irma makes its way towards the Florida Peninsula, and right now we do have those. Now we're looking at Key Largo on the left, Fort Lauderdale on the right. Dia, we've been just kind of seeing a worsening of conditions. We're seeing more wind. We're seeing more rain as the outer bands of this hurricane now make its way through.
Yeah, and Greg told us a little while ago the Miami area is experiencing tropical storm force winds, you know, now that that storm is moving further west. So again, those palm fronds there, they're just whipping around, and that's only tropical storm force winds, and we're going to see much higher wind than that. But, you know, that's where preparation comes in. A lot of you have boarded up your windows. You're all ready. You got your storm shelter, what am I looking for? The hurricane shutters. You got those up as well.
Right, of course.
So everybody's ready. ready. Everybody's ready, and that's the good thing, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, and Greg, you said this earlier this week, you know, when we were very unsure of this path, you said that you need to prepare for the worst.
Yeah, I think that's really, you know, we've been telling you this since yesterday morning. Prepare for a major hurricane. Let's hope there are some slight shifts in the track. Remember, Charlie did the same thing. I mean, just before the storm made landfall, people were sure, okay, here it comes. Just darted to the south, and because the orientation of the coast, it takes so little in direction change to really affect landfall. Weather Service or Hurricane Center is not going to send us hourly updates. I want to point out one thing. It's still a Category 4. Pressures come up to 929. Now, I'm not going to read too deep into that, but at least it's not falling, so the storm may have stabilized. There are also some factors that may work in our favor in at least maintaining its intensity as it's about to cross the Florida Keys, and that is this. You see these blue colors that are diving down across the Gulf of Mexico? This is not a typical satellite picture. This is called water vapor. It's the satellite looking for moisture in the atmosphere. Obviously, there is a ton of it around Irma. It just sticks out. It's a tropical system. But this dry air could get caught up in the western side of the storm. I hope it does, because that would try to eat away at the storm a little bit and prevent it from strengthening as it is now a Category 4. Here is the 5 o'clock update to the track. Next track update is at 11 o'clock in the morning. We've continued to see this slight pattern of just tiny little incremental shifts in this track to the west. Still a zone of uncertainty, and there will be a little jogs with the eye. The eye does not travel in a straight line. The momentum and the spin around that eye, and every time an eye wall redevelops, shifts the eye by 5-10 miles. And those little shifts make big changes in the position of the storm in the future. That's why we're going to see these little wobbles. The track for us is somewhat important because if you live to the east, to the right, storm's moving up, of where the storm is headed, you're on the stronger side of the storm. This is where you see the strongest winds, by far the heaviest rain, the isolated tornadoes. The west side of the storm, though intense as well, not quite as intense, and that's important. Right now, any farther west shifts, I hope they continue, because really to get any kind of good news out of these west shifts is a far enough west shift that the entire eye wall stays over the Gulf of Mexico and we never see landfall. That's ideal for us. Now, we would still get hurricane conditions along the coast, but your nastiest winds would stay out over the Gulf. And they can stay out there for, I think, all we care at this point. We certainly wish for that. Right now, the storm is intense, but notice the west side certainly doesn't look as intense, as healthy and well organized. These reds just gradually go to oranges and yellows on the east side. On the west side, I think there really is a little bit of dry air trying to work its way into the storm. Let's hope that continues. Hurricane force winds now entering the Keys, so the Keys now experiencing the worst of it. Your tropical storm force winds extend into South Florida. This is probably a good 100 miles worth of tropical storm winds. So even before you get close to the center of circulation, the winds are already strong enough to cause some minor damage. So this is a long buildup to a very intense core of strong winds. On that east side of the storm, you also look for a tornado threat. Tornado watch continues, still looking at a tornado warning. It looks like it in Brevard County. We'll